Good evening. It is 6 p.m. I'm calling to order the Fountain City Council meeting for April 26th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes.
Here.
Councilmember Hinton.
Here.
Councilmember Corey.
Here.
Councilmember Rick.
Here.
Councilmember Applegate.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan.
Present.
I have 7 members present.
Thank you very much. That moves us on to item 4.1, presentations. EPA Brownfields Grant Program Overview by the Coalition Partner. Ms. Bailey.
Evening, Mayor, Council, and public joining us tonight. We do have a brief presentation to provide an update on the EPA Brownfields Coalition Initiative. I have 2 guests with us, which is Shauna and Aaron, who actually are the Colorado Springs administrator of the grant funds. And awesome, IT's got it up on the desktop already. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron. Just tell them to click.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Aaron Egbert, City of Colorado Springs. I'm an engineer in the Public Works Department. We're super excited to partner with Fountain on this project. We're really coming to the end of it, but we wanted to kind of bring you up to speed, give you an overview, show you some of the good stuff that we've done. And I'll have to toggle through my glasses and back and forth. So next slide. So how this really started was in the City of Colorado Springs, we've got a creek called Shook's Run. There were 44 bridges that crossed that creek. So we started with a bridge study. We determined a transformational approach for the whole corridor. And then we hired Stantec to help us with a funding strategy for the corridor. The real low-hanging fruit was the Brownfield program. So we created a coalition with Colorado Springs Utilities, City of Colorado Springs, District 11, and Fountain, and we were successful on a grant that started funding in 2019. Next slide. The grant was for $600,000. The term ends this October. We do think we're going to file for an extension. What we're trying to do is make sure that we're 70% spent, because as you'll see, there's going to be more funding opportunities through the Brownfield program this year, and the city's going to start building a program to kind of capitalize on those federal dollars. Next slide. The Shook's Run corridor basically starts at the north side of Patty Jewett Golf Course. It's 4 miles, runs through residential areas, goes down through part of the core of downtown through a linear park, gets kind of into an industrial area, and ultimately has a confluence with Fountain Creek down at a place called Campers Village, which used to be an old KOA campground that the city's looking at acquiring. We're also looking at repurposing some of our parks down at that confluence area. Next slide. And I'll turn it over to Kimberly.
Thanks, Aaron. So just a focus area for our community specific, we focused on the US 85 Urban Renewal Area Corridor, which runs from the very north tip of 85-87 down to exit 28. Exit 128, which is in the purple area on your map. The focus concentration areas are the Old Town and the Gateway District, which you can see is the bottom 2 tiers of this map. And then the Fenton Creek Bank site is at the mid portion up by Mesa Ridge Parkway. It does have the Scott's manufacturing facility within that quadrant and a few other ancillary industrial uses over its decades of time. Next slide. So a brownfield is defined as a property where there is perceived or possible contamination or substance of presence of contamination in the soil. The use of the $600,000 funding and grant that we received from the federal government is to use the funds on priority sites that will attract investors and redevelop land assets within infill areas to maximize existing land as well as infrastructure and utilities. So right now we are participating on the EPA Brownfields program. That is the grant that was assigned to us as a coalition, but there is also a state of Colorado Brownfields program. And so under the coalition effort, the partners are looking at, is there any reciprocal dollars that we may be able to pull into our communities as well? Next slide. So this is the basic goal of the reuse of the funds to prevent sprawl. Again, we're focusing on infill redevelopment, helping to create new jobs in the community, improve the tax base and property values, of course, with uplifting or reuse or redevelopment of idle and underperforming assets in communities, as well as public and environmental health is the stewardness of those dollars going forth. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Shauna.
Good evening, council members. Shauna Lippert with the City of Colorado Springs. I'm the Senior Economic Development Specialist in their Economic Development Department. Thank you for having us tonight. So as you can see, when it comes to the Brownfields program and what type of work this covers, you're looking at a few different types of assessments that this current grant with the coalition will pay for. So there are phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessment grants. Or work that needs to be done on different sites. You can also be testing building materials, and I believe that there are one particular site in Fountain where testing of building materials was assessed to see if there were contaminants or asbestos, things like that. And then part of the grant will also pay for what's called cleanup or reuse planning. So if there are sites that are either underutilized, known contaminants, or possible contaminants, part of the grant will pay for some type of reuse planning to see what could this be instead. So next slide, please. So thinking about the EPA and what they'll pay for, I would like to mention that the EPA with the Brownfields program is coming down the pipe with historic funding dollars in the future. So they're looking at $1.5 billion coming down the pipe for different grants, and the opening for the proposals will be this coming fall. So talking about multi-purpose grants, more assessment grants, cleanup grants, and again, some of the reuse planning grants. So because this coming year, they're not really looking at coalitions as much as they are bigger types of programs. And so the City of Fountain would have an opportunity to apply for their own Brownfields program if they would like to. So part of the coalition schedule and accomplishments that we've done in year 1, so the first year, 2020, was really all about planning, getting set up with a program, looking at work plans, lots of outreach planning between all the coalition partners. Year 2, 2021, they completed 5 phase 1 ESAs, 3 phase 2 ESAs completed. There were more phase 2s underway, and then a lot more outreach efforts. In 2021, they did have at least 2 public meetings where community members could have opportunities to ask questions, provide input, and property owners were ongoing being able to apply to be a part of the Brownfields program to have their property considered for as a part of this grant. Year 3, our current year, 2022, we do have 7 phase 2s completed or underway. Lots more outreach efforts. We did have a community engagement event last month, and so we had, I think, 42 people attend that, so really good engagement with that. And then we have been doing more cleanup and reuse planning at 4 different sites. From an economic development perspective, really big picture, what this grant can cover is really looking at redevelopment barriers. So removing those barriers, promoting infill development, really looking at sites that can generate public and private revenue generation, really focusing the use of grants on priority sites to attract investors and become a catalyst for employment opportunities. And the big piece here also is helping neighborhoods thrive by really removing the barriers and looking at those blighted sites. Next slide, please. So specifically projects in Colorado Springs, currently right now underway, we have 2 phase 1 ESAs and 4 phase 2 ESAs. We do have 1 building material survey completed, and then we are either completed or underway with 3 reuse planning sites. So you'll see on the map, all the different red stars are all along the Shooks Run focus area. So that was the focus area for Colorado Springs, and looking really at that Shooks Run corridor. Next slide, please. All right, and I will turn this back to Kimberly to focus more on projects in Fountain. Thank you.
Thanks, Shauna. So we're going to wrap up real quickly. So the projects in Fountain did include a culmination of Phase 1 and Phase 2, environmental assessment sites, as well as some building material surveys were done, and one cleanup or reuse planning site is underway in our community. It's important to note that the grant dollars can identify or negate any hazardous substance on a site. If something is detected through those Phase 1 or Phase 2, then a reuse or cleanup planning is funded under the grant, but the cleanup of the site has to come externally from the grant funds, if that makes any sense. Okay, so we can get you all the way to that pivot point, but that pivot point of actual cleanup, if it's required, will take another grant, or it will take private dollars to make that happen to that particular property. Next slide. So as we said, we're kind of in the culmination of this 3-year effort. It's unbelievable that our coalition is blinking an eye and we're 3 years into this endeavor, but it will culminate by the fall of 22. We still have some work product to deliver under the scope of work. And as Shauna mentioned, there is potential funding for additional grant funds in the fall timeframe, based on if that's a necessity for our community or if there's an opportunity for some particular sites with private landowners that we could advocate and promote this awareness around. For current work product under the coalition, please refer to the website, which again is housed with Colorado Springs because they are the award recipient and they are the administrator of the grant dollars under the coalition partners. And with that, that was really our brief presentation. I don't know if you have any questions, but we're more than glad to address anything.
Thank you so much. It's been a long process, huge learning process. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions for any of the people tonight? No, any questions from the audience? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, that moves us on to the next department update, PD, Chief Heber.
Okay, good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council and esteemed citizens and visitors. So I know everybody is here tonight to see Hulk. This is our therapy dog. If you haven't seen him yet, this is one of the 2 great things we did in 2021. There he is again. One was bringing Hulk in. That was an idea that was stole from one of our sergeants. That was the best practice from other law enforcement agencies in the region. Hulk is currently being trained to take over many years from now as chief of police. He's the most popular officer we have in our department. I've been treating, instead of, sit and speak, I've been teaching him about budget, leadership, our 4 C's and HR laws. So he's going to be well equipped when I retire. Fran, you're going to be in good hands when Hulk takes over. Good story about Hulk, and this is the sad part of law enforcement that I'll share with people. When he first came on duty with us, we had a sexual assault of a young lady in an elementary school by a parent. She was very resistant to speak to anybody in cops. She was obviously dealing with the trauma. We brought Hulk over to the school that day. Hulk was really able, after she loved on Hulk and played with Hulk for about an hour, she was able, with help, to give us a statement which helped her and her family get justice. So I would tell you on that day, Hulk has already done a tremendous service to our citizens, and most importantly to our kids, which he spends a lot of time in the elementary school. So next slide, please. So I want to spend a little time on just orienting everybody to our mission, vision of 4 C's. This was the mission and vision we selected as a staff in 2015. I would say still today, 7 years later, these have been our guiding principles. I might go back in and change 1 or 2 words or update it slightly, but at the end of the day, we really tried and inspired to get it right and used it to guide and build our agency and our legacy that I inherited from Todd and where we stand today as an organization and as a city. I want to highlight our 4 C's, and Fred and Gordon, they'll kind of understand. And if you're a military person, then you understand that in the Army, we had the Army 7 values. And they were kind of our guiding principles as Army leaders, Army officers, young soldiers, that in lack of all guidance, of absence and orders, right, those were the principles the Army really tried to instill upon us. I thought long and hard about that, and something, many of the people don't know that our policy manual, we use a Lexipol, which is a great manual. It's best practice. If I was to print all of those and print it out on the desk here, it'd be about that thick. That's our policy manual. Then we have the laws, which Colorado Revised Statutes. That would be another book about 4 inches thick that I would sit here, and police officers are expected to know all those things, which is impossible. What we do expect them to know is our 4 C's, and let me explain that. In lack of all absence and all guidance and all orders, number one, I will tell you that we hire and retain cops for character. Not that they've been a cop for 10 years, not that they were a SWAT team guy or detective somewhere, but we hire and we interview for character. And that character, they're accountable, both police and fire, while they're on duty and off duty. And it's the off-duty conduct that maybe in some agencies is not standard, but it's our opinion that you can't be a police officer, certainly, and a firefighter in our community and have your personal life not be in order and not live in the values of our city and the values we strive for as an organization. So character is important for us. Compassion, and you might not find that in a lot of police departments' mottos. You might find some other words. We chose compassion. You got to have compassion for your people, for each other, for our community. What I try and remind our police officers, and the community should know this, that, you know, when I think back at my life, and we all have a life, 3 degrees left and right in your life, maybe you're the person we're responding to. So think carefully on how you react and treat our citizens and treat them with respect. Because usually they call us on our worst day. Competence, we train competence over time. You know, it takes the national average and the standard in law enforcement. It takes a cop when we hire them 3 years of doing the job every day before they're confident and competent and can do 90% of their calls for service solo by themselves and don't need any assistance. So we grow that competence over time, right? And there's a learning curve that takes with us. Many of our officers, we hired our police commander, Austin. He started with us as our first commander at 16. He's a 21-year-old police officer today, and he still looks like he's 16. So I've had many community members, if you see him out there, be like, hey, Chief, I saw this kid wearing a uniform. Like, is it 21 Jump Street? And yeah, it's kind of our version of 21 Jump Street. But you take a young kid like that, and we're going to build his competence over time. And commitment. We want you to be committed to our values, to the city, to our mission, to our citizens, and to our mission and vision statements. I won't read the mission and vision statement. I'll just kind of highlight a couple of things that I think are important. You know, really this is our goal, and I put our organization up against anybody in the state. And I truly believe that. It was our goal that we tried to strive to and build to 7 years ago. And our 61 men and women, I'd put them up against anybody. You know, it's respect, human dignity, constitutional rights. You know, way before George Floyd, right, really brought this to a national stage where we talk about this. You know, at the end of the day, people want to be treated equally under the law, which is we follow the Constitution, right? If we follow the Constitution, we follow the laws, then we treat people regardless of their race, sexual orientation, where they live, their economics, right? We treat them the same. And that was part of our vision statement right from the start. So I think we were kind of getting it right when we took a look at this 7 years ago. Build strong community relationships, trust with our citizens. This is who we work for. And really a spirit of transparency. One of the things I knew very early on, Todd and I talked about it, is we have to be more transparent today in law enforcement. The days of no comment, the days of you can't see the video, those days are over, and they sailed for our agency when Todd had it, and certainly when I took over in 2015. We were just going to be more transparent because we work for the citizens. Here is, you know, it's interesting when I look at this statement here, right, it's in our strategic priorities for this year. First responder, mental health, and we're going to put money, and we're doing some creative things with that. We've done 2 sets of yoga training in the police department, and although some of the tough yoga guys might not like it, they've all had a great time, and it's gone over very well, and we really use that as a mental health stand-down day, as yoga part of that. We're going to look at bringing in a physician to do physical exams to make sure physically our firefighters and police officers are fit for the job. The organization that does this, they've actually found police officers that were at the cusp of a widowmaker type heart attack, and they were able to diagnose that heart attack before it happened, and that officer got treatment. So, you know, that type of stuff can save a life. I'll talk about the other thing that we're doing on the next slide, but we really made some good headway on that. And really down here is the effective and efficient customer service, and really the ultimate goal is improving the quality of life of our citizens. That's what we're here for. We want them to be safe. We want businesses to come here. Public safety plays a large role in that. We want our housing values to continue to increase. We want the perceived and actual safety when we sleep at night and they're out there, that we feel safe, that our schools are safe, Fred, we did that tour together. And that's really been our goal, and I think to our best extent, while not being perfect, because the word in here is strive, because it's impossible today to lead a perfect organization, right? You have 61 human beings. You have all the things that are going on in the world today, the nation, coming out of COVID, mental health, right? It's impossible to be perfect, but we strive to do that to the best of our ability. Next slide. So here's a current operational standpoint. As the writing of this slide, we were 61 of 60. This is how the Manning ties in. Today, by Friday, we'll be at 59 out of 61. So we're going to lose an individual on Friday that couldn't take the pay cut to stay with us, and he's going to go back to his agency. Patrol division is staffed. Really, our two bread and butter missions, patrol, SRO. If we do nothing else throughout the day, we have to do those two. We have to provide a patrol response to our citizens, and we have to properly secure and provide for the safety of our kids through the SRO mission. Those are the two that cannot fail. Patrol is 28 out of 29. SRO come Friday will be 9 out of 10. That includes the only canine, dedicated canine drug sniffing dog that I'm aware of in the state that serves a school district and protects our kids. Traffic is staffed at 4 of 4. City Council has increased our traffic staffing by 2 officers over the last 6 years. That number, as we get some over here, is probably going to need to grow as we get more people in our community and driving through our community. But they're staffed, fully staffed, detectives fully staffed, canine fully staffed. These are only single purpose in law enforcement, military. We would say they're single purpose. They're only drug detection dogs. We've had canine dual purpose aggressive attack dogs before, but I mean, this is a secret I'm going to tell everybody. The only people those dogs ever built was cops, so it wasn't very effective for us. So we went from that dog and we went to the drug dogs, and they're great dogs and they've been very effective. And obviously with the legalization and decriminalization of drugs, we've seen fentanyl, we've seen drugs at time over the last year skyrocket throughout our state and certainly in our community at times too. Over here, operations, this is just, things I want people to know about. We have 3 patrol teams that are on 3 10-hour days. Some police departments right now, their manning is so bad, down 20 or 30%, they have their officers working 12 hours. For me, that's a red line we don't want to cross. You have tired officers, they're exhausted, it's a 13 or 14-hour day, the propensity for them to make a mistake becomes greater. We really want to hold the line and not be there as a community. So right now we have our 3 shifts, you have 2 teams, so that's 6 to 8 cops, 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. The rest of the time you have anywhere between 3 and 4 cops trying to do our patrol response out there. Like I think sometimes people will say or think that, we have unlimited assets, but the community needs to know, in all fairness, that's our staffing amount that's out there, minus those 2 teams, 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. SRO, 3 at the high school, 2 at middle school, 1 at Welty, 1 per elementary, great team. Traffic enforcement, 2 per day. This is great, 365 days a year. They cover about 18 hours a day for our community that they're out there. Special operations includes our detectives, our DICE team. DICE stands for Directed Investigations Community Engagement. This is Lieutenant Racine's team. They're phenomenal cops. They do all the problem set. They work very well with code enforcement. They're really my solution, one size fits all, to really help the community, and they do great work. They're also Task Force U.S. Marshals, so they can go anywhere in the country and chase bad guys. So if we have bad guys that come in our community and we want to go get them anywhere in the state or anywhere in the country, that team of 4 people can go get them. Our therapy dog, which is AK, the future police chief, he's been great. Our K9 teams. Special teams, rapid response, it's our version of our SWAT team. It's a level 2 team, level 3 team. It's a SWAT team light. It's not a full-time team like you would see in a bigger agency, but they do a lot of training. And they've been out and protected our community on numerous occasions. Our version of a Bearcat, which is an MRAP, has been shot 3 times, and both times it has come out unscathed and protected the officers that were within that vehicle at the time it was engaged. So that's good that they're safe. Accident reconstruction, we have accidents, we have the motor teams that does patrol, and we have our beacon team, a highlight for our community. We hired and brought on the 1 beacon team last year, phenomenal success. You see the results. My anticipation, we finally have a lead on another beacon clinician that wants to do the job. She is currently graduating with her master's degree in May, and we hope to have her interviewed and on board sometime in June or at the latest July of this year. So we'll be fully up with 2 beacon teams. So we're excited to do that. Here's just some other things we do. The Police Explorer program really grown over the time. That's all about high school kids within the Fountain Valley. We started with 4 or 5 when we first started the program, and now there's about 26 of those kids in there, and it just becomes a great community outreach. Neighborhood watch, community engagements. We're currently over at Fire Station 1 doing Autism Awareness Night, which supports the month of April. I know we all wanted to be there. The entire staff is over there. We anticipate we're going to have 40 or 50 kids tonight. So we'll post great pictures, but the advertisement, we have a DJ-free a bubble machine, there's gonna be some singing, it's gonna be a great world-class event. Just an example to reach out to those members of our community. Civilian support, I will tell you all this, and it's over here. Without our civilian support people, we couldn't do our jobs. And sometimes they become the unsung heroes of the police department, and they're not at the tip of the spear, but behind the scenes, they keep us out of jail, they keep us out of trouble, they make sure we do things the right way, they make sure our reports, our evidence gets correctly processed. All of those things could cripple our police department if they weren't being done right. Our crime analyst, Wanda Cabello, I inherited from Todd, does a fantastic job. If you've been to our crime analyst and you want to know one person in the community that knows the heartbeat of crime in this community, it's her. She knows it. She studies it every day, 10 hours a day, 4 days a week. Evidence, this is great. This is also our officer quality control, which is really our internal affairs. And really this year, we're going to formalize an early intervention warning system. We kind of have done this by doing it without formalizing it. But for example, let's say I have an officer that gets 2 complaints within a 30-day period and they get the 3rd, okay, a complaint. That triggers a sit-down conversation and evaluation in the totality of circumstances. Is that officer okay? Are they mentally okay? Are they going through a divorce? Is there something else going on in their life that's impacting their job? And it could be no, and it could be it's just the way it fell out, but there could be something there, and we're going to formalize that program, and I'll present that to you later this year when I give you some input on what we've been working on. Current issues, manning, always a challenge. This is every law enforcement agency in the country, certainly in the state, in our region. There are bigger departments that are down over 100 officers. Pueblo was down 60. We were down to 2. Some other agencies have gone through some harder times where they've been down 40%. So we spend a lot of time on our manning, and it is a challenge, and it's only going to get more challenging. We really focus on quality compared to our character and our 4 Cs. And retention is an issue, officer safety and wellness. Vehicle fleet management, as everybody in the supply chain got caught. We've had 5 vehicles on order now for over 2 years. We've received 1 out of those 5. So we've really had to stretch our fleet resources to make sure that our cops were safe and they could get out there where they need to do their job. The vehicles are supposed to be coming in, but it's been an issue we've really had to navigate, as the rest of our community and everybody had to navigate through the COVID and supply chain. Civilian staff, they're going to need to grow over time. Todd and I had about the same civilian support staff. That was 40 cops, and now we have 61. So at some point in time, regardless of the future, when I come to City Council and I humbly ask for a 3rd records tech, know that I've waited as long as I can wait without us filling that position. And on that day I ask for it, we're really going to need to fill it, or we will crush the people that are there. Every single one of those civilians that Todd had, I had, they're still there. They're dedicated. We couldn't do the job without them. They're real heroes. Some other things, legislation, our current environment. Madam Mayor, Scott, all of us that watch these bills are engaged. You know, the fentanyl bill, we're experiencing a fentanyl crisis. There are 200,000 pills, pressed pills, that get taken off the Denver streets every week by the DEA. 200,000. Those are coming to Colorado Springs. They're going to come to Fountain. Some of our kids still do these pill popping parties. We caught wind of one of them about 2 months ago, and we were able to shut it down before it happened. That could have been the party where those fentanyl-laced pills comes into the Fountain community, and we had 10 kids that are dead that night, and they'll be instantly dead. And Narcan won't save them. We won't be able to save them. So, you know, with all of the different things we're facing, and that bill that we fought long and hard through CACP, Sharon, you and I went up there. That bill got backtracked by people at the House, and now that's a less bill. It's weaker, so we're hoping the Senate can save it. So I did contact Senator Heisey today. We're trying to get that bill back on track, but it's scary out there for our community and really for our kids. Decriminalization of drugs continues, jail population management and bonds. It is just harder to hold people in jail. We've been less effective. They get bonds, they get back out. We post them, right? There's 3 wheels of the criminal justice system: the police, the district attorney, the judges, and the correction system. We're just one wheel of it. And those wheels don't always work together the way they should, right? And everybody covering their lane for different reasons. I'm not here to judge that. I just know it's harder. We put that out when we do our social media posts to let the citizens know what this person was back out on, you know, for 4 felonies, and are back out, you know, free as a jailbird doing more crime, right? For the general population, I think really we really get upset by that. I certainly do too. Way ahead, and this is what we're currently discussing now. 2 to 3 years, we have enough resources, as long as this doesn't get really, really bad,
that we'll be able to provide the safety of our current population as it grows slowly. As we've discussed, 5 to 8 years down the road, with 40% more homes, our population increase in the city, more people, more problems will come, more traffic, more crime. The annexation, which I know a lot of people are here to discuss tonight, certainly is going to have impacts on the city of Fountain. Increased draw on resources, traffic flow, that's both police and fire, accidents, increased crime, the forced fire station. The good news for the citizens that are here today, through some things we really did good as a city, is we'll have about $2.1 million by 2025 to finally build the fourth fire station that Todd has been very aggressive in getting multiple locations that we can build it on the east side. The problem, if we build it, we have to be able to man it. Right now, if we build it, unless I move my desk down there so I can just make sure no one robs us during the day, we won't have the ability to man it or put any resources there. So it really doesn't allow us, do us any better. Added benefit in that is it will increase our insurance ISO rates across the city. Should save citizens $400 to $600. That's good for everyone that's a home payer, as long as your insurance uses ISO. Verified by 2 independent Fountain insurance agents, $400 to $600 is the savings in that. So that's good news. We want to save our citizens money because inflation's been tough. And future citizen quality of life, perceived and actual safety. Businesses do they want to be here, impacts to the housing market, calls for service times impacts. And then really here, you know, at the end of the day, and I'll show you the next slide, go to the next slide. At the end of the day, this is my final slide. These will be the men and women that do the impacts, our firefighters, our first responders, right? They will feel the stress. They will feel the lack of resources. Will probably get down to 12 hours someday, and that's not going to be good. If Commander Lewis was here, the one thing I've been trying to talk, and we talked about, he was in Detroit. Detroit, when he was a young officer, had 5,000 cops, and it was a good city. Today, when he retired 7 years ago, Detroit had 3,000 police officers. They never got ahead of it again, and it was done. If you drive through Detroit, the closest I can tell you, the last time I was in Baghdad, Iraq, looked like driving through parts of Detroit. Burned out buildings, hollow buildings, it's bad. So that's kind of the definition of a failed city. We've talked about other cities in our area that have got behind the initiative, and certainly here, we don't want to do that. So here's our Beacon team here. Here's us supporting. I don't know who this is. This was a Care Bear that showed up impersonating the chief of police. This is one of our detectives here. He loves Halloween, and he was the Ghostbusters dude. This is one of our canine officers, Officer Becerra, and his dog Moody. This was the call for service last week, and I don't know if everybody knows about this. I'll just do one last brag. I'll take questions. I'll sit down. That call for service last week could have been devastating. A vehicle caught fire proceeding north on I-25. It was on fire. Notice it was on fire. It ran off the road to get off. It was so much engulfed. It went down on Badley, and that vehicle was totally engulfed, and multiple small fires along I-25 in Badley. In the process of that, a multi-vehicle accident occurred southbound, and then a motorcycle crashed where an individual compound fractured his leg. The Fountain Public Safety Department, as just a shout out, that day, those police officers and firefighters worked spectacularly together and protected our community with support from our regional partners and ensured the safety of our community. They did not fail, and it was heroic. So, any questions?
Yeah, I just, the bill that passed, I believe it was last year or maybe the year before, that had to do with the really fast turnaround of the body cam footage. I believe you have 14 days to turn it around. And I know I've been talking with various senators and representatives trying to get them to lengthen that turnaround time, just because it's really, really short. Is it truly impacting the department now that you've had a year or two to work with that?
It has. So we've had to take one of our full-time persons that work in the front office, the PSR. We've had to train her now to also do body-worn camera. So, you know, again, we take that out of Hyde as an unfunded mandate. We have to figure out how to do that. And she does body-worn camera on her off time, on the weekends, on some free time. Of course, we compensate her for it. But it has had an impact, and it will continue to have an impact. There's another similar bill that they're running this year that will make it even worse. It hasn't been proposed yet. It's been spoke about. And there's also another SRO bill coming back wanting to, again, strip the power of the SROs in our schools. And it's the same representative from Denver that ran it last year is trying to run that same bill a little lighter again this year. So that's the environment we're in.
I believe it's 16 days and counting till they're done up there.
We're counting.
16, is that right?
I think so.
Is that about right, Ryan? Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Rick?
Chief, thank you for the briefing. I do appreciate it. If you could take a moment for the public.
Sure.
Can you give us a success story for the Beacon team and kind of go into a little detail of what the Beacon team is? I get the emails. I know what it is. I see it. But for the public that's here, can you give them an example?
Sure. So Beacon stands for Behavior Health Connect Team. It is a co-responder model. One of the things I certainly agreed with is, we have to look at law enforcement differently and we have to expend resources differently. So 2 years ago when we got together, requested the Beacon team, we take a trained mental health specialist backed by UC Health with access to UC Health, drugs, follow-up, medication, psychologists, support structure. We partner them in real time with a Fountain police officer who is responsible for their safety, and they go to calls such as soldier, suicidal, check the welfare. It is much better when a trained mental health professional versus my 21-year-old kid that we just hired, that's still growing, along with a seasoned 20-year veteran cop who is a sergeant show up on scene to defuse and de-escalate that situation. Mr. Rick, there are countless stories of that happening in our community, and in every one of those calls for service, it is ended peacefully for the individual and also for the responding Beacon team. And that person is then followed up on. When you get those reports that they did 5 follow-ups, they go back and visit that person, make sure they're doing okay. Great success, and in all of those we track. This is a great stat too, because the answer is not arrest people, right, and stack felonies on people. It doesn't help. In 90% of those calls, 95, nobody goes to jail. They're treated in place, they do a safety plan, they secure guns, right, for a certain amount of time at their request. We bring them back, we store them safely in the PD. The risk is lowered, they get help, and that's the way we should be doing it, right? So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do any other council members have any questions? Councilmember Duncan?
Good afternoon. I don't have any questions. I just want to say I appreciate all of the hard work that your PD does and the fire department does. The autism awareness, that's a big deal. As last year, I brought a citizen that lives here in Fountain. The PD helped find her son, a little 6-year-old that took off, nonverbal. And because she had been taking him around, the police officer, he was so glad to see him. He got in the car with him and he brought him home. So that was, she was standing right here where you are crying about that success story. So I really appreciate that. And yesterday, I didn't get to see you on the news. My son came in the room and said, "Mom, the Fountain Police Chief is on the news." And I said,
Cool, what happened? Usually it's not good. The Fountain Police team's on the news.
So he was glad to see you on the news.
Great.
He was very proud to see you on the news.
Thank
So,
you for that, ma'am.
we did pass by that accident, and again, a shout out to the fire police department
They did
of
great.
Fountain. We see you everywhere. We see you helping all over, not just in Fountain, everywhere.
Yes, ma'am.
And the people that I was in the car with acknowledged how they see Fountain all over, helping everywhere. So we see you and we appreciate you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll pass that on.
Councilmember Hinton?
Good evening, Chief.
Good
Hey, I
evening, sir.
appreciate, can you just let your officers and men and women know in the fire department that we appreciate all that they do? And tell them again, I had a great time touring with the SROs.
Great visit.
I understand that as the city grows, that need will probably be more.
Yes, sir.
Because of our children going to these schools, elementary, middle school, high school, and the pressures that provides for our SROs. So just let them know they're doing an outstanding, fantastic job.
And one thing that we really prided ourselves on, and it does tell on both comments, is that we put our SROs into the elementary schools. That's where we start changing the narrative, that cops aren't bad. And as your visit, we walked around those schools, those SROs are like the little Pied Piper. Some of our kids don't have trusted adults. Military families are deployed, both parents deployed, so they're staying with grandma and aunt. That cop becomes, more than a cop. He becomes a role model, a parent, a trusted adult. And if we keep building that in our community, then we're gonna build them up the right way. And my hope and prayer has always been that anytime a kid needs help in Fountain, they see a cop, they know they can go to that police officer, hopefully because they had great SROs, which they do, and know that we'll help them.
Wonderful, because that was a nonverbal child.
It's perfect.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
As long as we're talking about your SROs,
Yes, ma'am.
kudos to Corporal Kling again, Officer of the Year for the American Legion.
Yep.
Couldn't be prouder of
Couldn't be
him.
prouder. He's gonna compete at the state and national level now.
Yeah. So
So
it just
we'll,
shows
keep
the
posted.
commitment and the
Quality.
quality guys that we have here. Get quality guys and gals.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am.
If you think you're important as a council member or a mayor, just walk into a room of kids with him, and they don't care about you at all. They just want to hug him and love on him. It's a
That's true.
great relationship that
Very
they
true.
have. So it's really, really good. Thank you so much for everything you
Thank you.
do.
I'll pass everything on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, in the words of Nancy Reagan, these kids today need to learn to just say no. They need to assume there is fentanyl in anything they are handed unless they're getting a pill from their mom or dad out of the Tylenol container, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that serious. And so
It
we
is.
really, please have some frank conversations with your kids, because this is a drug that there's no second chance.
No, there's not.
No second chance at all.
And the amount that can kill you will fit on the end of your pen, and it'll kill you. That's how dangerous it is. That's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. I think we do have one question from someone in the audience.
First of all, thank you, Chief.
Could you come up front, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys all. I just wanted to know, you guys are dropping down to 59 this week. Did you say the category? I probably missed it. You said you were going to drop
We're
another.
gonna lose one SRO.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need.
I thought you were going to offer to sponsor an officer or something. I got all excited that Fountain Sanitation was coming up to Fountain. All right, thank you very much. You have any questions for Chief Hubbard? He's always available on the hours that he's at work. And a very open door policy, so thank you. That takes us on to item 4.2, Board and Commission Committees. We have no reports tonight or no one to appoint. Item 5, City Council Agenda Requests. City Council shall use this time to request any items for future consideration. Start to my right tonight. Councilmember Duncan, do you have any agenda requests?
None at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Applegate. Agenda request, correct?
No, none tonight.
No? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, Councilmember Hinton?
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Corey?
Nothing tonight.
And Councilmember Rick?
Nothing tonight, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Okay, that takes us on to item 6, public to be heard. Citizens may address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Council may not be able to provide an immediate answer, but will direct staff to follow up. Out of respect for the council and others in attendance, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. I put in a call today to ask Ryan Parcell to come down under our short 3 minutes from the county. Ryan is a legislative liaison, is that for the county? And I asked him to talk about a bill that I believe has big implications for the county, but it will trickle down to us as a city. So if you could come up, Ryan, and please share your expertise with us on that bill.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and staff. I will do my best to keep it to 3 minutes here. But this is certainly a topic that I could spend a lot of time on. You know, sitting here listening to the comments from your staff, I'm amazed how similar the city of Fountain and El Paso County are. We may have slightly different constituencies or voter pools or areas of responsibility, but a lot of things that we cover are the same. In the past, we've partnered on road construction projects. We also have a beacon unit, and our culture is also of compassion, commitment, character, and competence. And that's why I think it's so timely for us to have a conversation about a bill, because that's one of the things that we track as well and has a big impact on our organization as a political subdivision of the state. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but tomorrow the legislature is going to vote on a bill that will cut county services. Now, of course, the name of the bill isn't cutting county services. The mechanism of this is Senate Bill 2230, and the way that they're going to do it is by expanding collective bargaining to 62 of Colorado's 64 counties. Now, you can have a policy debate about collective bargaining, And people could agree or disagree on either side of the issue, but I'm here to talk about the impacts that will have on the county and the services that we provide. It's worth noting that in earlier versions of this bill, higher education was included but was stripped out in the final version because higher education reported that it would be an 8% tuition increase to administer collective bargaining to every higher ed institution in the state. That 8% tuition increase would be passed along to students, which would make education that much more unattainable and unaffordable. And so they were pulled out. Counties will have a similar impact, but nobody is ever going to get an invoice for an 8% increase to county services. As an organization, the only way that we can balance that budget is to cut services. And the cuts will be deep and they'll be impactful. On just the initial administration of collective bargaining in El Paso County, staff's estimate is that it will cost taxpayers $6.1 million in lost services. If you add to that further implementation costs, those costs skyrocket to about $25 million. And just as a baseline, $25 million is the same as filling 5.6 million potholes in unincorporated El Paso County, or overlaying 82 miles of road, chip sealing 225 miles of road, hiring 251 deputy sheriffs or 332 DHS employees. All of that will be done without a single vote from an elected commissioner or any registered voter in El Paso County. We will all bear the costs of implementation of this without any sort of say. To make matters worse as well, the bill attempts to have a no-strike provision, but it has so many loopholes in it that, in effect, it's hard for staff to call it with a straight face a no-strike provision, which means that if somebody dials 911 or needs a snow plowed or something like that, there's a chance that during a strike that somebody may not be there to answer the call. El Paso County staff has also put together other issues that we have with the legislation. Aside from what I've talked about already being the cost or the omission of a no-strike provision or citizen obligation without representation, there are serious Tabor constitutional questions. And the State Department of Labor has a lot of power, very little accountability, all of which will impact not just residents of the unincorporated areas of El Paso County, but everybody. People in Fountain drive on roads in unincorporated El Paso County. Usually people can't tell which jurisdiction that they're in, but we will feel the pinch, and that will impact our ability to work together on issues like beacon units, like fentanyl, like transportation and infrastructure. And so with that, I'd like to say, aside from the issues that we brought up, if there's a temptation to think that it's just the county, because that's how it stands now, the Colorado Municipal League, Higher Ed, and K through 12 education all worked hard to get themselves out of the bill. It may be us today, but it could very well be somebody else tomorrow. And cities were considered as a potential avenue for accomplishing this. El Paso County has worked hard to educate people about the impacts that this would have. And to that end, thank you, Mayor Thompson, for joining us in Denver on Friday for the press conference that was held with commissioners throughout the state. Proud to say that you were the only municipal elected official that joined us that day. So thank you for your support. This is something that will affect the business climate, the government climate, and everything else up and down through our region. Thank you, City Administrator Traynor, for your work on coordinating a letter of support in favor of our position. So if anyone's interested, the bill was introduced yesterday and it will be in committee tomorrow. We have very few days left in the session, and our worry all along is that this would be put in at the last hour to push it through as quickly as possible and not give members of the public the opportunity to be heard on serious concerns on this legislation. So if anybody is interested, the testimony will be 1:30 tomorrow afternoon up in Denver in the Senate committee. And if anybody would like information about how to testify, I'm happy to do that. I also have copies of the cost and analysis report that El Paso County commissioners, or that we prepared for commissioners. And with that, I'll pause and answer any questions.
I just really appreciate you coming down last minute tonight. I'm texting Scott while you're still testifying in the county commissioners meeting, like, I know it's super uber late, but can we get him down here, So, thank you so much. But again, for people, it's SB 22-230. You need to email or call your state representatives and senators tonight, tomorrow morning at the latest, before they hit the floor. This is very serious. We are great partners with the county. It is going to impact services down here because we do have DHS down here. And as you said, the 911 call center, and all other services. Imagine if we try to do a project jointly with you on a transportation project, the costs are going to be exorbitant, and it's almost going to be the reverse of you coming to the cities. Cities were in this bill originally. They stripped us out because of the home rule status. They didn't want to have to fight with us. But if the county wanted to unionize, it could go to the voters of the county. Is that correct? Right now, we don't have to change anything.
With all due respect, even it wouldn't take a vote of the people. Adams County already has a collective bargaining agreement with their folks, and they've been in the monitor because they're so concerned about the state legislature encroaching on what they view as a good thing that they've set up for their employees with additional unfunded mandates. So it's a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. The commissioners have been clear. If this is an unfunded mandate to spend money that we don't have on a program that we don't need.
Right. And Mayor Hancock, in a meeting I was at, stated that the city of Denver has voted on this 5 times, if their city wanted to unionize their employees, and they voted it down all 5 times by significant numbers. So it is a remedy that is available already.
It is.
If a city or a county wanted to do it.
Yeah, but as it stands now, the only people that will vote are the employees who would then try to get additional benefits. And I'm a public employee. Obviously, I understand the dedication that many public servants have, but it's the very example of 2 wolves in a sheep voting on what to have for lunch.
All righty. Councilmember Applegate, your light is on?
Oh, that's right.
Okay. All right. Thought you had something passionate to say there. Okay. All right. Any other council members have any questions or comments on this bill? Anyone from the Mr. Heckman again, come on down. No, you got to come on up here. You know that. Come on, come on, come on.
Is there a fiscal note tied to this, and what is the amount?
There is a state fiscal note. The fiscal note contemplates from a state expenditure perspective for additional employees and roughly $600,000. The initial setup for counties across the state is $30 million, but I want to caution that that's a phase 1 estimate. And that if you were to gather all the estimates submitted by counties across the state, the cost of implementation statewide ranges from $156 to $400 million.
Could you just repeat that?
Yeah, the estimates submitted by all counties statewide, $156 to $400 million. And keep in mind that doesn't include Denver County because I said 64 counties. Because the city of Denver is considered a city and county, they are excluded, and Brownfield for the same reason. So those costs would be a lot higher if those large and urbanized counties were to be included as well.
Thank you so much for coming down again tonight. No questions from anybody? Okay, again, it's Senate Bill 22-230, and action needs to happen quickly.
If you'd like, I brought copies of the report.
That'd be great if you could give them to Scott or Joni. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Sharon, I had a question.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Duncan?
I just had a question. So those of us that are not able to testify, there is an option to be able to view it on Zoom. Do you have that information?
Even though the committee hearing is tomorrow, we have not yet received the links from legislative staff that would help facilitate the specific time or mechanism to testify.
Okay. I just wanted to put that out there.
But if anybody wants to come up, I'll be taking a car up, and I'm happy to give you a ride.
Okay.
If you do get the information at the last minute on how to sign up to testify, or at least watch the hearings, could you forward that to Scott real quick and he can get it out to us?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can tell you, though, it's going to be long. I was on hold today for 2.5 hours, and the first bill that they were debating didn't even move anywhere. So it can be a long time you're on hold. You're going to burn up your internet. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it so much. Okay, so I do have some cards from citizens to be heard. I've already asked one person to, because the item that they had put on their card is going to be on the agenda a little bit later, so that person's going to wait. I do have one other person, Mr. Brent Johnson. You wanted to make a general comment regarding growth. Does that also have to do with the item on the agenda later, Cane Ranch?
Partially.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to wait till we have a public hearing on that. So if you had something else to say that's not about
I
that,
wasn't-
that's okay.
The agenda didn't say public hearing on it, so
Yeah.
I was not sure if there'd be a public comment.
Yes, there will be a
time or
public
not.
comment hearing,
All right,
a
thank
time
you.
on that. Okay, all right, I'll put yours over here to wait too. Thank you. Okay, with that, we have Mike Fink, who is down to single digits here on the days, huh?
Madam Mayor, members of council, senior staff, members of the public, I am your Water Resources Manager Emeritus, and I will be finishing my career here at Fountain in 3 days. I've had 16 years here working for the water utility, and worked with several different councils, several different mayors, a lot of different people behind that dais over there. And it has been a pleasure for me and a privilege. Thank you all. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Would anybody like to make any comments on that? Any council members? Councilmember Estes.
I just want to thank you for everything you've done for the city. I know you have been invaluable through the PFAS issue that we've had and through all the other water issues. So enjoy your retirement, but we will miss you.
Councilmember Duncan.
I'd just like to say thank you for your service to Fountain. You're detail-oriented and you dot your I's, cross your T's. We're really going to miss you. Thank you.
I hope you're planting that knowledge, that, wisdom that you have in your younger staff, because you have a lot of it. So thank you so much for your time and your experience you brought to our city. Thank you. All righty. With that, we'll go on to the next person, Eric Runya. It says Police Department in areas of concern of roads.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Just for the record, I know this individual through work, so I just want to make sure that that's on the record, that he's coming up here. And I've asked him to come out tonight to City Council.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, great place to, don't just bend his ear, bend all of our ears. Okay.
Good evening. So my name is Eric Runia. I'm a United States Marine, a former deputy sheriff. So forgive me if this is not the time or the place, but as just a regular citizen here, just something that I want to address that is a concern of mine. I know we got a lot of different things on the agenda, a lot of different things that are concerns for everybody. But as just a regular individual, in the past 3 months, I've been in 2 vehicle accidents. One vehicle got totaled, and 1 week ago I had $9,000 damage to my truck, neither of which were my fault. I know the police department is low-staffed. I know that everyone has been budget cuts and stuff like that. My concern is this. There are a lot of places here in Fountain where the people are using the shoulders of the roads for lanes of traffic constantly. I'm always at the front of the intersection because I'm watching 3 or 4 cars go through the red lights, and I'm the first person to stop. You could fund any project you want in the city of Fountain by ticketing people for going through red lights and not stopping at the stop signs. you can make $1 million a month. There's car parts at every single intersection in this entire city. Lives are being destroyed. My oldest daughter had a brain bleed and a stroke. All right, this stuff happens because of accidents. Lives are changed. Entire families are changed because of accidents. I dropped my youngest daughter off at Mesa Ridge High School. You go to turn into the turn lane, you can't just drive into the turn lane. You have to look in your mirror because some idiot is using the shoulder as a lane and he's 30 yards behind you going 50 miles an hour. This might not be the time or the place, but all these other concerns, I want my daughter to be able to graduate from high school. All right, I've got 2 vehicles that are trashed. You know, I live paycheck to paycheck. I'm a disabled veteran. I'm on a fixed income. You know, I'm fixing my vehicle because I can't afford to have someone else fix it. And everywhere I go, people go 10 miles an hour through the stop signs. No one stops. 25% of the people use their turn signals correctly. Everybody goes through red lights. You know, I know the police department is completely strapped, but something needs to change in the city of Fountain when it comes to the traffic. Something needs to change with the shoulders being used. I see people constantly in wheelchairs, the motorized wheelchairs, using the shoulders because there aren't sidewalks that go down every single road. Mesa Ridge Parkway does not have a sidewalk that goes down there. And they ride on their motorized wheelchair down that shoulder. And I see people every single morning between 6:55 and about 7:20 in the morning that use Mesa Ridge Parkway, those shoulders, as lanes of traffic. People's lives are constantly on the line because 90% of the people in this city act like idiots.
See the lights blink.
They're just being selfish. It's all about me, myself, and I. And like I said, you know, I'm just a regular guy, and this is just my concern. But I want my daughter to graduate high school. You know, there's lots of other stuff to be concerned about, but I'm sick and tired of my vehicle getting destroyed by other people. I'm sick and tired of being concerned about just a simple drive of me making a 1.5-mile trip to her high school and having my PTSD being spiked constantly by hypervigilance because I have to watch everybody all the time because we don't have enough police officers. If it were up to me, I quadruple the force that we have because we could use it. And he knows that. We have so many people here, we could use 4 times the force. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for taking your time to come in tonight, and I'm sorry about your cars being in accidents. Unfortunately, it is not just our city, it is everywhere, all over the state, the county. People, it's like they just have forgotten how to drive. I don't know how the way to say it, and it's very, very frustrating. I know that Chief Hever and I have had many conversations on this. We're on a task force for, what's the name of that one? Smart Drive or something like that, yeah. And we're all racking our brains on how to get people to drive safer. I mean, CDOT tells me, and unfortunately Mesa Ridge Parkway is CDOT, so that's a state highway, so the sidewalks come under the state highway, and it's up to them whether they require them or not. But CDOT tells me where the construction is, the planes that go over that are regularly clocking people going 75 and 85 and some 90 miles an hour through there. And that's just, they're going to be calling in for, we've already talked to Heber about this, for, additional patrols and things. And it's just, people need to slow down, they need to stop. I agree with you, when the light turns green, I don't care if people are honking behind me, because I'm waiting for all the people that are still running the red light to keep going through. And I'm glad, your family wasn't hurt any worse. My husband had a brain bleed, I know how scary that is, and had to have that surgery and everything, so I can relate to that, but I appreciate you bringing that concern here, and hopefully the paper can pick it up a little bit and maybe publish some articles on some of the statistics that are going on around here. Chief Hubbard, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. Unfortunately, from my brief, we've doubled our traffic team in the last 7 years. The growth that's going to come in and around our community is only going to make what you said is worse. Sir, I was also in the Army 3 times overseas. I understand what you struggle with. I get it. 2020, we wrote approximately 3,100 traffic citations in 2020. Last year, we wrote 4,500. I just want you to know that the police officers we have, they care and they're trying. Unfortunately, in all the accidents, distracted driving, following too close, is responsible for approximately 90% of the accidents. That continues and continues and continues, and we'll stay engaged, and I'll give you my card, and maybe we can come down and you can have some coffee and we'll talk.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, thank you. Come back again. All right. Okay, I don't have any other additional cards from anyone in the public. Is there anybody that didn't turn in a card that wanted to speak during the public to be heard time? Okay. All right, with that, we will go on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so request, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately at the discretion of council. So we have the consent agenda, items A, B, C. Councilmember Rick?
Move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Councilmember Hinton?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion, or does anyone want to remove anything? Okay, seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries 7-7. Okay, I am going to ask for council to indulge me a little bit tonight. I do have a couple of requests to move some things around tonight. I've had a request to move item 9A. I'm sorry, B, thank you. Item 9B up to before old business. And just to be courteous, so the person doesn't have to stay through the entire meeting, which might be rather lengthy tonight. Then after we do that, I would also like to handle items 8, B, C, and D, and move those out of the way so the gentlemen here present online for those items also don't have to wait through the lengthy hearing. Is that in agreement with everyone to move those, just rearrange those items tonight?
I agree.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So we will be handling item 9B first under new business, Fountain Creek Winery LLC tax sharing agreement. Kimberly Bailey and Troy Johnson.
Evening again, Mayor, Council, and public. Thank you for your time. Kimberly Bailey, Economic Development, Urban Renewal Director for the city. Yes, we are bringing forth to you on Action 9B, a tax sharing agreement on behalf of Casita Bonita, who is doing business as the Fountain Creek Winery. They have invested in their real estate property at 606 South Santa Fe Avenue in the Gateway District of our community. That particular property has sat in a blight condition for over 15 years with lack of improvements and lack of economic vitality for this district corridor. The corridor that we are in as well tonight is one of the highest distressed community pockets in the city, as well as the county of El Paso County. So this is a significant movement to help a small business come in and enter and provide services and jobs on behalf of this distressed pocket. With that said, the tax sharing agreement proposed is advocating for a 4-structure quarterly payment of the transportation impact fee to the small business. So they are fully paying their 100% obligation of the transportation fee instituted by council under the Transportation Master Plan with Public Works, but they are just needing a grace period to fully pay the $20,317. So this savings up front will allow them to get their business up and open and operating in a quicker fashion, and then turn around some of those proceeds to adequately pay in quarterly installments the $20,317 transportation impact fee. No more than 2 years. They can pay this debt off as soon as possible if that's in their best interest to do so without a penalty to that early payment plan. And then there is a lien assessed to the property until that fee is, of course, fully paid in full and recognized by the Public Works Division. With that premise, then I am asking for council to support and adopt Resolution 22-019 on behalf of the Transportation Impact Fee Tax Sharing Agreement with Casa Bonita, doing business as Fountain Creek Winery. And I'm glad to ask any questions you may have.
Yeah, I drove by there on the way tonight, and they're putting something out front, a canopy or some type of structure out front.
Yes,
so.
and our business owners are with us. Susan and Don Quintana are actually seated in the back of the room with us this evening.
Yeah. Okay, it's exciting to see something happen over there.
Yes, after a very long time of blight and just lackluster opportunity for the community and the district.
Right. So since the applicant is here, would they be comfortable with coming down and maybe sharing us a little bit about what their business is going to be doing? And they're all looking
I'm
at
not
each other.
sure. Are you comfortable in doing so? We are. Okay. Thank you, Susan and Don.
Good evening, Council. I'll be
Good
glad to address
evening.
any questions you may have, first
And
of all.
your names again?
My name's Don Quintana. This is my wife, Susan Quintana.
Welcome.
I am the owner of Casa Bonita Builders. I was a custom home builder for several years, and I acquired the property under the business name of Casa Bonita for the purpose of obtaining the permits and development plan and everything we needed to get the building up and running and presentable. For the last 9 years, my wife and I have also been associated in a winemaking business and another business in Old Colorado City, so we're experienced in what we want to do down here. We've seen a viable opportunity to come to Fountain to address what we would like to do, because a lot of our customer base is actually from this part of the county. So it kind of drove us down in this area for that reason, and the fact that we found a pretty good piece of property that had been neglected, that actually needs some work, and we thought we could make something nice out of it. So my wife and I intend to run it. She handles the kitchen part of it and the restaurant part. I'm actually the winemaker. I make the wines, and we have a viable business, I believe, and we'd like to move ahead and get this done.
Thank you, because you know what went through my mind when you said Casa Bonita was a whole different image that.
Yeah, it's two entities. It's the builder, and the builder owns the property,
Right.
and ourselves as the business owners of Fountain Creek Winery are going to lease it.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, no cliff divers though, right?
No.
No cliff dive, okay, all right, yeah. All right, there'd be another unique tourist attraction down here, right? Thank you so much for coming in tonight. I'm really, really excited to see your business coming to town. Councilmember Hinton?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I appreciate you taking the stands to come down and bring your business in the city of Fountain. I promise you that our citizens here will go to that store and utilize it. It is a need for us, and providing that beautiful aesthetics right off the exit will be awesome to see coming off there. So thank you so much for taking that on and being brave to bring a business down here in Fountain, which is so rightfully deserved that we need it here in Fountain. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, and it's been a difficult process getting this done, taking about 8 months, and you have a very good, very strict planning department here, and at times it was frustrating, but the end result is good, and so that's where we're at. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
I just want to say thank you for being one of our first businesses that came in and embraced our design aesthetics that we're trying to embrace in our Old Town area. So I'm really excited to see it. And as an Old Time Fountain resident, I'm excited to see something new and shiny come there.
Good, good.
Thank you.
We're all watching your progress as we drive up and down, and we're anxious. Do you
Did
have
you
a?
see the porch today?
I saw the porch. Is it going to be a porch? I saw the frame for it
That's why I'm in my
today.
construction garb. We were taking beams and cutting beams and doing a little demolition, so I
Right.
pulled off the job to run here and get this meeting underway.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a great place for Fountain, because the people that are in our club, we have 4,700 people in our club, and 70% of the local people are from Fountain. That's why we picked this town.
Oh, wow.
So we're pretty excited.
Didn't realize we had so many wine connoisseurs in town. My goodness.
Well, we have such a good menu too for the food, and we're gonna do Sunday brunch, and they're gonna be really happy that, that we're finally here.
Okay, well, be sure you invite us all to your grand opening. It sounds really exciting.
With any luck at all, maybe we're trying to make the 4th of July, we'll see.
Okay. I mean, my famous question for everybody is Coke or Pepsi, so.
Well, we do Italian sodas.
Okay. Oh, you make your own soda. Do you make it?
We'll get the Coke and Pepsi.
I'm just teasing you. All right.
Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments from anybody? All right. With that,
Thank
we
you.
Thank you.
have some business. So, Resolution 20-021, a resolution approving a tax-sharing agreement by and between the City of Fountain, Colorado and Fountain Creek Winery, LLC. Do I see a motion? Councilmember Duncan.
Staff recommends adoption of the Fountain Creek Winery LLC tax sharing agreement as an annual rebate in the form of a sales tax reimbursement to be applied to the off-site public improvement transportation impact fee paid by Fountain Creek Winery LLC on a quarterly fee basis as an incentive to locate in the Gateway District.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes.
I second the motion to approve Resolution 22-021.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for Resolution 22-021. Are there any comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Thank you very much for your support in small business.
Absolutely, thank you. We're excited. And we've been working on that gateway for a lot of years, Kimberly, so it's going to be exciting to see some changes come in. All righty, with that, we're going to move on to the other adjustment to the agenda. We're moving items 8B, C, and D next. So we will go to item 8B, and that is the second reading of Ordinance 1773, an ordinance annexing to the City of Fountain that area to be known as Singer's Subdivision Addition Annexation, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard and north of Dutch Loop, and hereinafter more specifically described in Exhibit A. Ms. Martinez.
Good evening, Christy Martinez with the City of Fountain Planning Department. This is the second reading of Ordinance 1773, considering the annexation of the Singer Subdivision addition to the City of Fountain. There have been no changes to the ordinance since first reading.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from council? Is there any questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, seeing none, Councilmember Rick?
Move to approve ordinance 1773 on second reading.
Councilmember Corey?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 1773. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to item 8C, second reading of ordinance number 1774, an ordinance approving a request by HPHR Properties LLC for approval of an overall development plan for the development known as Corvallis Lacey, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard and north of Dutch Loop, hereinafter more specifically described in Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you. Again, the second reading of Ordinance 1774, considering the overall development plan for the Corvallis Lacey. There have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none. Are there any questions from Councilor, for Ms. Martinez or anything? Okay. Councilmember Hinton.
I move I move to approve second reading of ordinance 1773.
Councilmember Rick?
Second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion on the second on the floor for ordinance number 1774. Any discussion? Thank you. 17. We already did 73. We're on, that's okay. No, that's okay. It takes a team effort.
I'll say it again. I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 1774.
Councilmember Rick?
And I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on 1774? I feel like I'm going through history here. Okay, seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
All right, thank you. We're going to go on to item 8D, second reading of ordinance 1775, an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Fountain, Colorado to planned unit development, PUD, district related to that area to be known as Carvallis-Lacey, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard, north of Dutch Loop, and hereinafter more specifically described in Exhibit A and B. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you. This is the second reading of ordinance 1775, considering the initial zoning to PUD, which is the planned unit development for the area known as Corvallis-Lacey, and there have also been no changes to this ordinance since first reading.
All right, there's no changes to it. Councilmember Rick?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, I thought you had a question. Okay, all righty. Are there any questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, seeing none. Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
I move to approve ordinance 1775 on second reading.
Councilmember Applegate?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for passing of ordinance 1775. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Seven yes, motion carried.
Okay, give me just a second to rearrange here. Okay, so we're back to the top to item 8A, first reading of ordinance 1770, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fountain, Colorado, approving the disconnection of certain real property generally located southeast of the Squirrel Creek Road and Shumway intersection, more specifically located in portions of section 1, 2, 3, 10, and 11, Township 16 South, Range 65 west of the 6th PM, County of El Paso, State of Colorado, and in a portion of Section 6, Township 16 South, Range 64, west of the 6th PM, County of El Paso, State of Colorado. Before you begin, Todd, I'd like to make a statement here for a moment of personal privilege here. Okay, so we quite a lengthy, very lengthy discussion when this item came to council the first time. Council took a lot of time because this was a very difficult issue, very different than anything's been presented before. And so we gave everybody a lot of time to really state their thing. So the purpose is for the applicant tonight is to discuss the disconnection for La Plata. Their stated reason for wanting to disconnect is that they believe in the future we cannot supply water to serve them. As this, my writing is very sloppy, I'm sorry. As this pertains to the City of Fountain infrastructure of the county, we wanted to discuss the possibility of disconnect, and the county requested to have a meeting regarding this issue. The City of Fountain had meetings with El Paso County, La Plata, and Colorado Springs to discuss Fountain for this disconnect, but the Fountain had 4 concerns at that time: public safety, infrastructure, utilities, and drainage. The previous council meeting where the disconnect was discussed quite at length, and we heard from all sides. We heard concerns also from Fountain Sanitation, how they felt they had received notification or not notification from the request for disconnect. After hearing all the concerns, the council voted to table the item for 90 days, and that's why we're back with this item today. So tonight, we're going to hear updates from city staff, the applicant, people in the audience, and probably Fountain Sanitation. All righty. Now, I asked the city attorney to reach out to every person, that each party will have 20 minutes to speak. The city clerk is going to reset the timer for 20 minutes. Councilmember Hinton on my left is going to set his clock on his phone for 18 minutes and call out a 2-minute warning so that you know that's your time to wrap it up. Yes, we can take, and we'll take a break before we get started. I just want to kind of get through all this. Okay? Alrighty, thank you for reminding me. So 20-minute timeline. We will have time for question and answer at the end. So I'm going to ask council and audience members to hold their questions until all the applicants have gone through their 20 minutes and we're at the end of the presentation. That way we'll get going and we'll get up and everybody will get their time. So the timer on the podium, like I stated, is going to be reset for 20 minutes. Councilmember Hinton will give a 2-minute warning. Councilmember Estes, or Mayor Pro Tem Estes on my right, will be keeping track if she sees anybody with questions or concerns, keep a list so we can maybe kind of keep it running. I do ask, if you're in the audience and you come up with a question, it's already been asked, that, so we're not here till 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night again. We're trying to limit it, but we're going to take a short 5-minute recess until 7:30, at which time we will reconvene to begin this, and everybody will have their. Mr. Johnson, did you want to say something first?
Just a quick clarification. So 20 minutes for the city to present
20
updates?
minutes for the city, 20 minutes for La Plata.
Okay.
And then 20 minutes for the council to ask questions and hopefully the citizens in the community. But if we need longer on people to ask questions, we will do that. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. We're in recess until 7:30.
check.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Please, City Clerk, tell me that I don't have to read it back into the,
No, you don't. We've got our 20 minutes, and I can guarantee you we will stay on that, Mayor.
all right. Councilmember Hinton's going to keep you
great.
on there.
Good
Is there
evening,
like a
Mayor and
buzzer
Council.
over there for him? Like,
You can buzz it. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just so you know, on our end of things, I'm going to go through 3 out of our 4 areas of concerns with just updates. We hope we sent you a complete packet to include the La Plata response letter at the end of February. So we hope you all had a chance to take a look at that. I'll cover 3. Dan will cover the utilities portion, but first I'm going to hand it over to Troy just so he can go over some parameters as well.
Yeah, and just kind of real quick, and I covered it last time, but thank you, Mayor, for kind of giving us a nice summary of our last time here. I just wanted to kind of clarify and set kind of the legal parameters again for the council. The standard that you have to apply for this item is a best interest standard, and what's in the best interest of the city. So as you continue to listen to the updates, that's kind of the standard that you'll apply in consideration of this agenda item. There was talk last time by Mr. Cook about kind of the other legal option that the property owner has to disconnect from the city of Fountain, and that's through the district court. And so the standard that the district court would apply is a failure to serve standard. And so, you know, that's certainly relevant in the grand scheme of if that's the best interest for the city. But kind of irrespective of this process is that one. And so, so while that's something to consider, that's the standard for a court to apply. And you have to apply the best interest standard. And, you know, I think they're here today and last time and through this process as a professional courtesy, because I think they want to ask permission from the municipality before they pursue that legal route. But it's not a lawsuit. It's not a claim against the city. It's a petition to a district court judge for disconnection for failure to serve. And so they would always have that right to pursue if you were to vote this down, but they're kind of here out of respect before pursuing it that route. But I wanted to be clear about kind of what that piece is, and so they would still have that option moving forward if you were to vote this down, but they wanted to come and pursue this option first. And so, you know, it's something to consider and to be aware of. But at the end of the day, the standard for you to apply is that best interest standard. And so with that, kick it back to Todd to give us kind of an update, and away we go.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate it. Council, we discussed 4 areas of concern, as the mayor mentioned, in depth at our last January 25th meeting. So just some updates since that meeting. Transportation-wise, transportation and public safety, as we heard earlier today from that gentleman, are the major concerns from the citizens. You've all heard that. Everyone understands those are on the 2 top priority lists. So public safety-wise, we briefed you last time that we had a meeting with Chief Niski of Colorado Springs Police Department. The times that we showed of 20-minute plus response times were not our times. Those were what Chief Niski gave us and that they were discussing. Since then, Chief Niski has retired, so he's no longer the chief there. So our next meeting is pending. They have nominated Adrian Vasquez, who I've known Adrian for 20 plus years. He's a good man. I'm hoping that nomination goes through. Once that is finalized, Chief Heber and I will go back up and have that meeting again with them. Bottom line, they're overwhelmed with what they've currently got. They're not thinking outside of what they've currently got. We're going to try to get them to focus on the Kane area as well as everything else along that Squirrel Creek corridor and see if they have an actual plan. But at this point, they don't. They are responsible to serve it, but they don't have a specific plan. In terms of the fire department, we had a very good meeting with Chief Royal, another good gentleman we've worked with for many years. Our current Chief Joyce with Fire Department is currently having meetings with him. He's had, I think, 2 this week, Chris. So he is making some headway with the Colorado Springs Fire Department. An area that I put under the commentary that we are concerned with is the number of responses that our fire department has been called into Colorado Springs in the last year, which was 341 times. and we are not at this point receiving any compensation to cover those resources. But we do the right thing, but going up into Colorado Springs 341 times is unreasonable. So they need to get a handle on that along with our help. So that's ongoing with the fire department up in Colorado Springs. Transportation-wise, we've had several meetings that have included a couple of times Colorado Springs, their public works director, and their head traffic engineer, as well as La Plata. The county joined us as well. We proposed a couple of things. When you see a regional TIF, that wasn't a City of Fountain concept. That came out of our master plan work that was done by Wilson Companies. Those were the folks that sat down and said, we need to come up with something regionally because, as Ryan said earlier with the county, people don't know when they're on a county street and then it turns into a City of Fountain street. So they proposed that. We agreed with that. We proposed that as well. Colorado Springs said that's a non-starter and they wouldn't discuss it. So therefore, we then had a meeting with La Plata. We forwarded them a list of streets that will primarily be impacted, on both properties off of Squirrel Creek itself. Both of those properties right now will not exit to the west without coming onto Fountain Streets. So just a reminder, our master transportation plan showed we had 300 million of improvements that we needed to do to improve the traffic issues that we've got. If both of those projects were in the City of Fountain as we wished originally, that would have brought in somewhere between 70 and 100 million in traffic impact fees. So you can half that just for Cane Ranch as well as T-Cross. So without that, we really have no plan. We're looking for assistance on how we can move forward on a plan together to hope to somehow improve some of our traffic issues. So we're waiting. We have not heard back from La Plata on that second proposal that we sent forward. So those are three areas of concern. Those are quick updates. Is there any questions I can answer before I turn it over to Dan?
No, we're doing questions at the end
Okay.
just to keep moving.
Questions at the end. Dan?
Good evening, Council. Paul, would you put my slide up, please? Thank you. We just have a timeline that I want to share with you this evening. Okay, thank you very much. We met in February of 2021 right here in this room with representatives from La Plata to receive and discuss specific design details of the proposed annexation of the T-Cross property. At that meeting, it became evident, at least to me, that I knew that we didn't have physical infrastructure in the ground to be able to serve the proposed annexation. But I also, at that point in time, did not know and could not confirm that we had water resources that would be available to serve the proposed development. We went back and within 30 days did an initial analysis and came to a conclusion that we had some concerns about our water resources, what we had available to serve. So we initiated a more formal study, hired a consultant to take a look at our water resources, basically from source to tap, to see where we stood from a supply chain standpoint. Knowing that we probably were going to need some additional resources, in March of last year, we began conversations with Colorado Springs Utilities to acquire additional resources, specifically focusing on treated water capacity. We also initiated our water master planning effort at that particular point in time and focused on what to identify not only where we were today, but where we needed to be in order to service our water service area at build-out. In April, we received a study from our consultant that identified the weakest link in our supply chain as being treated water capacity. And so we continued to, we shared that information. In fact, we were sharing information all along the way, trying to be as transparent as we possibly could as we learned about our existing situation. We continue to work with Colorado Springs Utilities, then focusing specifically on treated water capacity. The master plan was completed in October, and it identified and gave us specifics of where we needed to address to improve our position as far as our ability to serve the build out of our community. We immediately initiated a contract with a consulting engineer to start to do preliminary design work, conceptual and preliminary design work of what we call the Fountain Reservoir, and that's the gravel pits that were mined out that we purchased in the mid-2000s, and to look at physically if we have what kind of capacity those particular reservoirs would be able to serve. We received a project report in February of this year, and we learned that that particular project has the physical capacity to meet all of the needs within our service area, including the Cane Ranch area. We continue to meet with Colorado Springs, and in March of this year, we received a formal notification in the form of a letter in which they offered to us a couple of solutions, a short-term solution being what we call the bridge. They offered to basically provide for us what would be about 3.5 million gallons per day, and that is equivalent to about 5,800 single-family water connections. They also offered to us a 10 million gallon per day raw water connection to the Southern Delivery System. 10 million gallons per day would be equivalent of about 16,600 single-family equivalents. We met with representatives of La Plata. They contacted us to talk about availability of utilities, to talk about the availability of electricity. We took advantage of that opportunity. We had our consultant who did the reservoir design come in and make a presentation. We shared with them all of that information. We shared with them the information about the bridge that we had received from Colorado Springs, and also the raw water connection to SDS. So basically, we went from, in about a year's point of time, not knowing if we had the resources to serve, to confirming what resources we do have, identifying what resources we need to ultimately serve, and then also identifying the physical projects and getting at least a letter level commitment from Colorado Springs to provide us with the additional water, both a bridge, a temporary solution, and a long-term solution. We have been working on also probably the toughest nut to crack for us now is the financing of that, and I guess I kind of describe it as a snowball effect. If we can get that original ball in place and then start rolling, then we can start generating the revenues that we need. But right now, our biggest challenge is the financing. So that gives you an overview of where we've come over the last 14 months and where we stand with regard to our ability to serve in water capacity. Thank you.
Okay, you have approximately 4.5 minutes left on your time. Would you like to remind us of anything? Review anything? It doesn't mean they get an additional 4.5 minutes. No.
We're good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We'll give Mr. Hinton a couple seconds to reset his clock, and La Plata, your 20-minute time will start when you stand at the podium. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Council, good evening. Nice to see you again. My name is John Cook. I'm with the Hogan Lovells Law Firm, and we represent the two applicants who are requesting that you grant the application to have the Cane Ranch disconnected from the city of Fountain. And I'm going to keep my remarks, I'm sure, below 20 minutes, and you're pleased to hear that. I just want to again reiterate that my clients did not take lightly the decision to file the petition to disconnect. And I mentioned this last time, that Fountain's a wonderful community. Extremely impressed with your police chief, quite frankly, and what he reported. And if you go back to 2008, Corundum, which owns the Cane Ranch, would have never annexed into the city of Fountain if they didn't think it was going to be a phenomenal partner in the development of the Cane Ranch. And then if you fast forward from 2008 to just in the last 2 or 3 years, in fact, my clients and the city were great partners in moving this forward. And then sadly, as we all know, we're told over a year ago that this isn't something that's, been created by our client. We have unfortunately put ourselves in a position where we're having to request for the de-annexation to be able to have water elsewhere. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the last 90 days. My clients have, in good faith, done everything they can to possibly respond to all of the issues. And I was glad to hear that you would receive the letter. On February 28th, it was a 5-page, single-space letter, went into depth on every single subject, and that is largely the position of my client with respect to all of this. And then, so all of this is to say that, we have really tried, my clients have really tried to deal with this issue with the utmost respect and integrity to the city of Fountain. And I think we've done that in the last 90 days. But now we need to develop the property. And of course, we have one of the hottest real estate markets that anyone has ever seen, and we need to move forward. And now we have to, be here tonight making the request that we do. Now, I want to speak to a couple of the specific issues that were raised. First, Troy did a great job in describing kind of the legal parameters of what's going on here. And I just want to discuss what I hope is the very unlikely event that there would ever have to be a lawsuit filed in order to ask the district court for the disconnection, because I would respectfully suggest to you that is not in the best interest of the city of Fountain, and certainly is not something we want to do. If we wanted to do that, we would have done that a year ago, and clearly did not want to do that and put the city through it, put ourselves through it. But the reason it's important to discuss this is so you know what would happen. And this is something we briefly touched on last time. So there is a statute in Colorado, and I'll give you the number. It's called CRS, which is Colorado Revised Statute 3112-119. And it allows a court to order disconnection from the city if, and I'm going to read the words so there's nothing lost in the translation, such municipality does not, upon demand, provide the same municipal services on the same general terms and conditions as the rest of the municipality receives. Now, my clients never made a demand for 2 reasons. One, to the city's credit, we were told a year ago, don't bother because we don't have the water for you. And secondly, that was reaffirmed on January 7th, 2020, when the city issued a memo essentially to the world saying, if you don't already have something in process, do not bother filing any applications for development. And so, of course, we haven't done that. And again, we're not ascribing any bad intent toward anyone in this room about what's happened. I think people have acted in good faith to try and work through these issues. I think you've been well represented in trying to, by your staff and your city attorney, in trying to work through some of these issues. But the annexation agreement does require that the city provide water. Now, it also, in fairness, has other language in it that says, well, it's on a first come, first served basis, and if available, and those types of things. But respectfully, that's unavailing in this situation if we were to go to court, and here's why. One, there's this statute which says the municipality must provide the same services on demand. Second, there's a case
It was out of this region, as a matter of fact. Morgan versus the city of Palmer Lake. Identical situation. Landowner asked the city for water. City said, our annexation agreement says we don't even have to provide water. So they declined to provide the water. And they also then later refused to allow them to disconnect. That case went all the way up to the Colorado Court of Appeals. And they found, under the same statute, same situation as here, that no matter what the annexation agreement says, the statute controls and the municipality must provide the same services. And in that instance, it was again, water. So just so you know, from our perspective, what that landscape looks like in terms of ever having to go to court. And again, we do not want to do that. We would like this to be concluded tonight with a vote to allow disconnection. Now, I also want to touch on the water solutions that were mentioned. And this is what was informally told us. And I do believe it was mentioned that the financial part of it is a significant part. So this bridge or short-term proposal, it was actually referenced briefly in the Black and Veatch report that was discussed, that was concluded in 2021. And we were informally advised that pursuant to an agreement with Colorado Springs Utilities, there could be up to 5,800 single-family taps that would be available in this short-term solution. But the problems are, the city of Colorado Springs won't transport the water. The water is going to come from the Bailey treatment plant area, and that's a long ways away. They want to charge a $10 million fee to do it. The city doesn't have those resources right now to do it. And furthermore, it wouldn't impact the Keene Ranch at all, because at least my understanding is there are other developments that would absorb all or virtually all of those taps. So the short-term solution doesn't solve the requirement for the city to provide water to the Keene Ranch for their development right now. The long-term plan sounds like, you know, they ought to put a lot of thought into it by the Wilson and Company. And as I understand it, it's going to be the use of a former quarry on the other side of I-25. Fountain will have to have its own treatment facility, have to get the connections done. They have to go and get additional water rights, which sound like they're going to be bogged down in typically what is water court and all of those types of issues. And the current estimate was $212 million for that project in many, many years to get that done. None of which, of course, would address the legal obligations of the city of Fountain to provide water to the Keene Ranch. I think that's all I have, and I know you were going to hold questions till later. Thank you.
Okay, you do still have 9 minutes left on your time if anyone else would like to speak.
Wait just a moment.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Doug Quimby. I'm the president of La Plata. I just want to address Mr. Evans' comment that they provided a proposal on streets and traffic improvements to which we didn't respond. It's true we didn't respond. We just got that response a short time ago. To me, well, we don't consider that the transportation issues raised in that really bear on whether or not you should de-annex. It's certainly something we are willing to continue to discuss with the city of Fountain. But the dollar amounts and the requests as we understood them were far beyond our capabilities. And we couldn't accept it as offered, and it's certainly something we're willing to continue to discuss, but again, is not really relevant to the question of whether you should de-annex the Keene Ranch or not.
Okay, thank you. You still have a little over 7 minutes left.
I don't think we have anything further. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call up Fountain Sanitation District, please. Hopefully you don't need 20 minutes.
No, ma'am. Madam Mayor?
We'll time you anyway.
Thanks. Madam Mayor, members of council, I guess the main complaint that I had last time was that I was not afforded the opportunity to meet with La Plata. I didn't believe received proper notice as Fountain Sanitation District. I wanted to just report that we did have the opportunity to meet and discuss the wastewater services. I did sign a waiver stating that they didn't have to republish the notice and everything else. So I'm happy with what I received as far as the notice, as far as the application. And then the only other thing that I would report is that Colorado Springs Utilities was in that meeting too. And I have a letter of intent from them stating that Fountain Sanitation District will be the service provider of that area, regardless. Now, as a citizen, I'll hold those comments for later. But that's the update from Fountain Sanitation.
So your concern has been addressed and you're satisfied?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much. Wow, and that was short and sweet to the point. Thank you very much. All right, I really, really appreciate everybody staying to the timeline of what we set. I'm now going to have any questions or comments from the council. I would ask that you identify who the question is for before you begin your question. We'll let the audience go in a minute, yeah. But if there's any really quick questions from council first, and please identify the person you want to answer the question before you begin asking it so they have a chance to begin making their way to the podium while you're asking it. And Mayor Pro Tem Estes.
This question is for Troy. Mr. Cook brought up the statute from Colorado, and he says that the city of Fountain is obligated to provide the same services to their area as the rest of the city. And does that include issues beyond water? Does that include fire and police? Because does that mean that they're expecting the same response times and everything from Colorado Springs as the rest of Colorado Springs?
So let me make sure I understand your question. The simple answer is yes. That the district court would look at services kind of across the board if we are able to provide the same level of service to everyone in our community. That's the test. But I think maybe your question is, can Colorado Springs provide the same level of service? And that's not really what the court would look at, right? They would look at our ability to serve, and if we weren't able to serve, then they would, require the disconnection.
Well, then the question then for La Plata is, have you looked at Colorado Springs to see if they will be able to provide those other services to the same level as the rest of Colorado Springs?
If the Kane property is de-annexed from Fountain, it is our intention to annex it into the city of Colorado Springs. The services that would be provided and the way that they would be provided would be worked out in the annexation process and would be part of an annexation agreement. We're confident that the city of Colorado Springs could provide all required municipal services.
If you could stay there, before you, Mr. Rick, I'm going to ask a question. Sure. Do you have a written or signed agreement from Colorado Springs Utilities or another entity to provide you water?
No.
Written and signed?
No, that's part of the annexation process, which we cannot start the annexation process with Colorado Springs on the Kane property while it's in the city of Fountain.
So you don't have anything in writing, anything just in theory, saying that they will provide you water to that property?
We've had numerous meetings with with Colorado Springs Utilities saying that they can provide utilities and discussing the ways of how infrastructure gets extended, who pays for it, and so on. Do we have a signed agreement? No, we do not.
Okay, so you do not have a signed agreement that they will provide you with water or any other services. Thank you. Councilmember Rick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have multiple questions. I'll start with Mr. Blankenship. So as I understand it, sir, we do have a plan to resolve our water shortage issue. The question is just funding. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. If we approve this de-annexation request and they become a part of the county, and then Colorado Springs or the county, for whatever reason, can't give them the water that they need, could we as Fountain be required to give La Plata water even though they're not a part of Fountain?
No, and in fact, our code prohibits us from serving outside of the city limits.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson, if we de-annex this property and 3, 5, 10 years later, La Plata comes back and says, hey, we made a mistake, we want back into Fountain, are we obligated to re-annex them back into the city?
I think that's a good question. I think I would say no. There would be no obligation at that point to re-annex them into the city. I think our only obligation under the annexation agreement was to annex them, and we fulfilled that obligation. And so subsequent de-annexation wouldn't obligate us in the future. So the answer is no, we would not be obligated, I believe, in the future.
Okay. Finally.
Mr. Rick, can we give Mr. Applegate a chance? You've had a couple of questions.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Mr. Applegate?
Yeah, this could be, I guess, for Dan. On the other water that we could possibly get from Colorado Springs, does that have to come all the way from the treatment plant, or would we be able to connect somewhere south of that?
We're working with them at this time. We actually made 2 requests to them. We made a request to take water directly from the treatment plant because we are a partner in the SDS, and we thought that that might potentially be more cost effective. They specifically told us that that was not a feasible option to make a connection at the plant, so they're offering us a connection out of their distribution system, and they're working with our new water resources manager, engineering and resources manager, Taylor Murphy, to identify where would be an appropriate connection on their distribution system.
Then that would mean that the estimate that we got of what it would take to build a pipeline to get water to that point isn't the same as what we would do.
Right, but that's one of the things that we're trying to find the most economical location to be able to make that connection and be able to pull up to 3.5 million gallons per day through that connection out of their distribution system.
And that would be 5,500 homes?
3.5 million gallons per day based on the current peak usage that we experience here in Fountain would generate approximately 5,800 what would be single-family equivalent connections. Yes, sir.
Okay, and this question would be for La Plata. How many homes do you intend to build in your first phase? Just the first phase?
Well, in the first phase of our project, wouldn't be in the city of Fountain. The first part of Cane Ranch is probably years in the future, but Cane Ranch itself would be about 7,200 homes.
That's irrelevant. How many in the first phase would you be building?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by the first phase, sir.
You're building the whole thing out all at once?
No, but are you talking about the
first
Cane
phase that
property
you
in
build
particular?
in Cane Ranch? How many homes in the first
We
phase?
haven't done a plan for Cane Ranch yet, so I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Okay, but it would be phased.
Yes, sir.
And you understand how long it would take to build phase one?
Yes.
Yeah. And with the bridge would do that, and by then, there would be plenty of water.
I don't know. There's a lot of homes already approved in Fountain, a lot of homes in line in front of us.
It's already been explained that that's taken care of too. There
Well-
would be enough water for you from the bridge to build.
It's a temporary solution, wouldn't satisfy our problems.
Why wouldn't it if there are others guaranteed?
There's no way to finance
You
it.
just want to leave. You don't really care about the water then, because obviously
No,
it
I
could
don't
be
believe,
available.
I don't believe that you can deliver the water in a timely manner.
You just
There's
said
no
we
plan
could.
for financing it. There's no way to do it. And the bridge solution is a temporary solution. It's not a permanent solution.
No, but then we'd have a permanent solution after that.
I answered your question the best that I can.
You would never run out of water in your build-out.
Is that a question?
No, it's a statement.
Okay, we're going to go on to Councilmember Hinton.
So this question is for Chief. I understand everything sounds good in theory on paper, but when it comes to public safety, with the build-out of King Ranch and La Plata, that pressure to service that area, is that going to come from Colorado Springs, or is Fountain going to answer that call in the event of, domestic assault, fire? Who answers that call? Who's going to be it?
Well, jurisdictionally, right, it's Colorado Springs, that's our border. Typically, they respond to it same as in Fountain. Now, realistically, on the ground, Todd has already briefed us that we've been into Colorado Springs on the fire department over 300 times last year. That number will increase. The drain on resources will increase. As previously discussed, we spend a lot of time because of manning in the county in the security wide field area, and they also come and assist us at times too. But that will put that entire, other than, 8,000 homes or whatever that build out is, and our philosophy, if someone was in a domestic violence or a homicide and a police response was 20 minutes out from Colorado Springs, of course our guys would go.
Yeah. So with that being said, and this question is for La Plata, you hearing that statement, are you prepared for any type of reimbursement if that does happen, if Fountain PD or Fountain FD responds to in that area? We care about our citizens and we care about our neighbors, and we would like to respond if need be, but there has to be some type of give and take here. It can't just be all one-sided.
Is that a question or a statement?
It's both.
Okay.
So, if I understand, first of all, I can tell you that the city of Colorado Springs disputes the number of calls that Mr. Evans said. It has a lot to do with AMR, ambulance, and responses and the contracts relating to that. If you're asking me, are we going to pay for all the calls that Fountain has to make into the city of Colorado Springs if we're annexed into the city of Colorado Springs? The answer is no, we're not.
Okay, I see Councilmember Ricks. I'm going to ask one real quick question before you go back to you. I know you've got more questions down there. I'm just trying to give everybody an equal chance here.
No problem.
Okay, this question is for Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, ma'am.
If we de-annexed Cane Ranch, would that hurt our financial abilities to fund the water plan that you have already developed because of the lost connections?
The water plan is basically set up in phases so that we would, there's initial costs with each of the, I guess the bridge, the reservoir, and the raw water connection. But once we start to build that in phases, then we would, the cost per connection starts to go down. In order to serve the rest of our build out in our community without the cane, we basically need to create about 9.7 million gallons per day. And then the cane would add another about 4.5 to 5 million gallons per day. So if the cane doesn't come in, then we wouldn't build out as far in our, or as much in our projects. So I don't know that I could say that them not coming, that those loss of projected connection revenue would have any implication on our ability to build. We just wouldn't build as big of facilities.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rick, a couple more questions, and then I have another member with a couple more questions, and we'll just keep going.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one more question. Yes, I know, shocking. This question is either for Mr. Cook or Mr. Quimby. We've heard Mr. Blankenship state that if your request for de-annexation is approved, we're not going to be able to give you water later on. And we've heard Mr. Johnson say, if you leave, we're under no obligation to let you back in. So you're not going to get any water from us. You may not be able to get back in if you get out. Based off those two facts, are you still sure you want to go forward with the annexation? Because if Colorado Springs and the county say, it's too bad, so sad, we got no water for you, you're out there in the dry hole. Are you sure you want to go forward with this?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Carneal, can you please annotate that in the minutes? Because 5-10 years from now, I don't want somebody coming back saying, we didn't know we couldn't get water from you guys. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Estes?
A couple questions for La Plata. Did you guys do a water study like you did with us to see if we could provide the water with the Cane Ranch property, to see if Colorado Springs has the water capacity for you? The same study you did with us, with them.
I can just speak to the fact that we did a study with Right Water engineers about the lack of water to be available for Cane Ranch. Is your question, do we do a similar study to see if Colorado Springs could provide the water?
Yes.
All right, I can't speak to that. I'm going to have to ask Mr. Quimby too, or Mr. Burrell.
Okay, when you're speaking, can you make sure you're facing the microphone so we can catch everything? Because Mr. Rick might want to listen to this in 10 or 20 years, so I want to make sure.
My name is Don Gravett with La Plata Communities. The study that was done by the City of Colorado Springs through their HAR, Hydraulic Analysis Report, and it did look at both the north portion that we are currently trying to annex into the Colorado Springs jurisdiction, but it also took into account if the Cane Ranch were to be disconnected and then annexed into Colorado Springs. So yes, it was looked at by the City of Colorado Springs.
So, but you didn't do the same study. Colorado Springs did a study, but you guys didn't.
Well, we did a study in regard to the disconnection of Cane, but we're not in
you guys did a water study to see if we, when we said that we probably couldn't provide you water, you guys did a study and said, yeah, you can't provide the water. So did you do the same thing with Colorado Springs, or you're just taking their word for it?
Well, we're not dealing with Cane with the City of Colorado Springs at this time.
Okay,
We are dealing with the City of Colorado Springs on the portion of our property to the north of Squirrel Creek.
Okay, the second question is, when do you plan to develop Cane Ranch? When is that going to be started to be developed? Because I think I heard Mr. Quimby that there was no immediate plans for development.
Well, if we get over this first step tonight and the disconnection takes place, we'll immediately start the process. And it's a long process of getting the property ready for annexation into the city of Colorado Springs.
So do you have a timeline on that?
We have not spent money on what the next step is until we get over this hurdle.
My question is for Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans, we all hear about phases in developments. The first phase isn't even going to be in the city of Fountain.
Correct.
It's going to be how many? 8,000 houses?
Right now, the way the PUD was approved in Fountain, it's 9,000.
Okay, 9,000 houses. Okay.
Right now, what's happening in the industry is those densities are going up, not down. But right now, Cane
Yeah.
Ranch could build 9,000.
So if they de-annex and go to Colorado Springs, we could end up with a lot more people out there. But my question is a little different than that. My question is, developers come in and they have different phases they do. How many houses does a builder typically build in one of those developments in 1 year? Because I know that I think we had one permit pulled last year for a home, and we have 16 this year. And I think that's probably about average. So they want to build 9,000 homes. Say they build, do most developers build 300 homes a year in a development like that? 200? How many would they normally build?
The highest rates we've seen down here, at least in Fountain, in the mid-2000s, was between 500 to 600 homes.
The same developer? I'm talking about one developer.
No, those were all together, so it just depends on the size of the development.
Right.
With Aspen Ranch going now and then Ventana, we will probably see, if the market stays as hot as it is, it will probably be somewhere around 100, 120.
Okay, I don't think you're understanding my question. Ventana, how many houses are they going to build this year in that development?
Oh, they could finish probably 50.
50. You're going to build 50 houses a year. So if you take 9,000 and you divide it by 50 houses per year, how many years roughly is that to finish a development of 9,000 houses? Because I'm not doing math in public.
That's 180 years.
400, Daryl, help me out. Yeah, I don't, yeah,
Okay, that's
a lot.
That's a lot of years.
Long
Mr.
time.
Blankenship, do you think in 400 years you'll be able to provide water out to them for the 9,000 homes, based on an average of 50 homes per year, even if they built 100 homes per year out there?
Me personally, no, but I'm sure my successors would be able to do that. I mean, right now, we have we've identified, we have projects, we have property, we have commitments. At this point in time, the nut we have to crack is the funding aspect of that. And it's kind of the chicken and the egg situation, because the developers are obligated to, at least up until this point, the approach has been that they pay the connection fee, and then the connection fee basically goes to pay for the improvements that have been put in place. Because we purchased into SDS, we have some debt that we have to get past before we're going to be able to issue additional debt. But once that passes, then we're going to be either in a position to issue that additional debt, or we've also been working with our bond underwriter, and we are working on what's called an absorption study. And if we can demonstrate to the bond underwriter that a certain number of homes would be connecting per year, then they can estimate what that expected revenue would be, and could potentially issue debt based on that. So it's a lot of moving parts that we're continuing to work with, not only the bond underwriter, but we're working with the bond counsel. We're also working with legal counsel, looking at the possibility of creating some sort of special financing district that could potentially be overlaid onto these properties that would benefit from that, to generate that revenue, that initial snowball that I'm talking about, to get these initial expenses to cover the initial construction. And then once we get the ball rolling, then we will then, as long as development continues, we would continue to see those revenues that are necessary to generate the funding that's necessary to ultimately to pay off the debt. So right now, our funding question is what we're trying to address and figure that out. But as far as our physical ability to serve, the answer would be yes.
And one last question, I'll go to Councilmember Hinton, and then after Councilmember Hinton, we'll open it up to the audience and I have 2 cards already. Mr. Blankenship, is it common for a very large development like this for the utilities provider to necessarily have everything in place the day they want to break ground on the first house? And I'm saying that because I've overheard some conversations from some other local communities that they have developments that are going on for the next 40 to 50 years, and they're saying we should have it all in place by the time they're at the last house in 50 years. So that is not, is that?
That would be, I would say, a common approach. Because when you're looking, especially, I think one of the things you have to look at is the magnitude of the development compared to the size of the size of the community that they're going into. And so we were sitting on probably about 12% of our resources as surplus. So if you go into a much bigger community, say Colorado Springs, I don't know what they're sitting at, but if they're sitting at 12%, their 12% magnitude-wise is going to be much more significant than ours. So it would be probably not only impractical, infeasible, and irresponsible to have, at least in this environment, to have those resources in place, because there's a significant amount of funding that is required in our environment to acquire the water rights, to acquire the facilities. We live in a semi-arid region, so we don't have water just sitting around plentiful, and it costs a lot to develop that water resource. So we have about 9,000 taps, so it would not only be, I think, very, it would not, no, I don't think anyone could expect us to have a capacity for another double of our water system. And if we would have even been able to, if we would have tried to have done that, we would have had to put that on the backs of our existing ratepayers, and that would have been a significant burden to do that.
Mayor, 2 points of clarification. I want to make sure a reasonable time frame for a project this size, 30 to 50 years, depending on what happens in the housing market, because the project this size, they could have 7 builders building in different areas at the same time. The other one, I just want to make sure I addressed Mr. Quimby's comment about Colorado Springs Fire disputing our numbers. The reason they'll dispute them is because Colorado Springs Fire doesn't have an ambulance service. Fountain Fire Department does. Fountain made that decision many years ago, and it was a very good decision based off of the issues they're seeing up there right now with AMR. In public safety, if you roll into someone else's jurisdiction, you're fulfilling mutual aid. So they will say, we don't have an ambulance service, that's an AMR issue. Well, we do have an ambulance service. So those are our resources that are rolling into Colorado Springs.
Well, I don't think anybody can dispute Chief Niski on the news saying we have a 20-minute response time to our areas we have today.
Correct.
Councilmember Hinton?
So, Mr. Quimby, I heard your question that you will not reimburse Fountain PD or fire if there was anything to happen. Are you prepared to, when you're building these beautiful homes, to put that in your brochure as the nearest substation for police or fire and let your residents know about that? Or are you just going to omit that and just let people just move in and not know where public safety is at?
Is that a question or a statement?
It's a question because he answered the
Okay,
question.
I want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
If we develop our property in the city of Colorado Springs, all those items will be addressed, police, fire, response time, and we will represent truthfully the situation about public service to all of our future residents. We're a responsible developer. We've been in business for over 30 years. We've developed great communities here, and my somewhat flippant response was based on the proposition that no private developer reimburses other cities outside of the city where they're operating for ambulance services on their, that's a civic responsibility. It's not our responsibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. On that note, Mr. Johnson, you had some questions about growth in the area. Thank you for being so patient waiting
No problem.
tonight.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Brent Johnson. I live at 412 County Manzana. If you bear with me, I'm going to pontificate for just a second. My parents moved to Fountain when I was in second grade, 1978. I've seen a lot of changes. In the city, a lot of growth. We're at 30,000 people now. The scope of the growth that they're speaking of between the T-Cross Ranch and the Cane Ranch is double that. So what took 44 years to develop in the city of Fountain will be doubled over the course of the project, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, however many it takes. And to that regard, there's been a lot of talk. Mr. Johnson brought it up. The folks from La Plata brought it up about best interests. I would submit to the council that it is decidedly not in the best interest of the city of Fountain to have Colorado Springs occupy basically the entire eastern border of the city. You know, as a home rule city, you make decisions for yourself, you know, you control your growth. You get the city of Colorado Springs on the eastern border, who has no compunction about any growth of any kind, seemingly, and that brings all the power out of the city. And we are at the mercy of whatever they decide to build, and as was already stated earlier, all that traffic goes where? Right here, Mesa Ridge Parkway, the new Indiana Avenue connection, wherever it may be. And so in terms of best interest, to Mr. Johnson's point, it is not in the best interest of the city of Fountain. I think if that's the standard that the city is held to on a legal basis, then it is not. You know, and they say in life you have to pick your battles. And, you know, part of that decision-making process of picking your battle is this a hill you're willing to die on? And I say for the city of Fountain, absolutely yes. In this case, this is the hill we should be willing to die on, because it is absolutely a terrible idea to have the city of Fountain border the city of Colorado Springs and occupy the entire east side. Now, excuse me, I have a cold, it's difficult to talk. So my question that I have is actually for the La Plata folks. Now, given the fact that Cane Ranch being annexed into the city of Colorado Springs is dependent upon T-Cross Ranch being also annexed into the city of Colorado Springs, I apologize.
Just, yeah, if you just lean to the mic while you look at them, okay?
So in order for Cane Ranch, which has no contiguous border with the city of Colorado Springs, but does border T-Cross Ranch, which from the maps that I've seen has dubious at best contiguity with the city of Colorado Springs city limits, and given the 3-mile rule, I don't know exactly how far it is from the nearest city of Colorado Springs, which is somewhere up near Colorado Center, out near the airport, to Cane Ranch. You're talking at least 2 to 3 years worth of the 3-mile rule annexing out, and then you still have to submit your master plan, your concept plan, your individual development plans, all those things. You're years away from putting a shovel in the dirt. And it just seems to me that is that accurate? That's my question. You say that you didn't have a particular timeline because you haven't even started. You know, T-Cross Ranch has a master plan proposal that includes a fire station for the city of Colorado Springs and, you know, other things. But, you know, given that and given the time constraints that it takes for those things to get approved, are we talking 5 years before you put dirt, you know, shovel in dirt? 6 years, 8 years, less? I'm asking because I'm curious about how long that you're talking about. So you're years out from that, as opposed to giving the utility folks, the city of Fountain, time to work that out.
You are correct that the Cane property cannot be annexed to the city of Colorado Springs unless and until the T-Cross property is annexed to the city of Colorado Springs. Under the current timeline, the annexation of T-Cross, if the city approves it, will occur at the end of September this year. Once that occurs, we would immediately start the process, assuming it's de-annexed. We would immediately start the process of annexing Kane into the city of Colorado Springs. That would take approximately 1 year, so that would be September of 2023 before the Kane property could be annexed into Colorado Springs. The first development plans and so forth could be processed more or less simultaneously with the annexation. So the earliest that any development would take place in Colorado Springs on the Kane property would be late in 2023. The real timeline depends on a number of things, including the market and all kinds of other things beyond our control. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Next card I have is from Mr. Solanki. And thank you again for being so patient and waiting.
Madam Mayor and distinguished council member and professional staff and all invited guests here, greetings to you. My name is Ratu Solanki, and I have been living here in Fountain for last 42 years. So I consider myself old-timer here. And in fact, I decided to keep my place. My son, who grew up here in Fountain, now he's a high school principal in Colorado Springs, but I pass on my place home to him, so he will live here. So we plan to make our home a permanent home, and particularly for immigrant people. So I really love this place, Colorado Springs, Fountain. The early days when I moved here, I really thought that this is the place that I will die, live here and die. During my early days, work and education, I've been all over the country and saw what different places that I can live. But when I saw this place, Colorado, and particularly Colorado Springs, I thought this is a place that I will live forever. So I really love this place, Colorado Fountain, and I have really very much concerned, read about this place. Last week I read the article in our newspaper, the history of the Fountain, how early settler, and you have predecessor, lady mayor in a Fountain. All this kind of thing I read and study, and more and more I love a Fountain. And really then I heard about this issue about the ranch, and building some more homes and all that kind of thing. And then I was so confused how we will be able to take care of this, and particularly water. Water is the main issue. There are so many places that really suffer because not having a good supply of water. Even our permanent source of Colorado River is drying out and not able to provide the water that we need. So we may find a temporary solution, but water issue is very lasting. And if we are not able to take care of that, I think we really should not get into that. And I appreciate last week a newspaper, good article, good report of Chris Connor, Chief Chris Connor, I should say. A lot of question that answer. Good report, Chris. And really, I should say the message, good one, and good article. You probably should get A+ on that. And also, Mr. Evans, your explanation and discussion was very, very helpful to me. So I appreciate, and that's really the main reason I came to thank you for both of you guys doing a good job and answering some of the question. So then I really hear again, all I could say is that the DNX disconnect, and I guess as we joke about here, we have built a lot of Taj Mahal here, but now we have to build China Wall to protect ourselves. So that is what my really attitude. But then some of the issues that you guys discussing, I appreciate that you are giving good consideration on that. But my opinion is, please disconnect and don't want to do anything with the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Solanki. That's all the cards I have, but I'm sure there's some more citizens that want to speak. So Mr. Heckman, would you come down?
Madam Mayor, council members, I've worked for the Fountain Sanitation District for 38 years. So I've sat at the podium where you're at as a council person. Speaking as Jim Heckman from Heckman Point, I disagree with the disconnection. I think the community should control its own growth, and if there is whether it's an interim plan to a long-term plan, there is a plan to provide water, and we should retain that ability to grow our own. I mean, I just wanted to throw my opinion out there as a citizen. Now, the Fountain Sanitation District, it's going to be taken care of, made whole. The reason why we have the infrastructure in place was partly planning and partly because we're partners with Colorado Center. We looked at our growth area and we built the size pipe that we needed. That's why I can put sewer in it today, no matter what they build. But with respect to water, I think Dan and them have a good plan going, and we should retain the ability to do our own thing as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heckman. Are there any other citizens in the audience who would like to speak and have questions or comments?
How could I not?
You know I paused for you.
Yeah. I'm Fran Carrick. I really don't have a dog in this fight other than we live out by the property. We have property by the Cane Ranch. I wanted to address Mr. Hinton's question on the calls that would go out there. It's my understanding that if Colorado Springs or Fountain serviced a call out there, there might be some kind of an agreement, I would think, with the city of Colorado Springs and Fountain that they would be reimbursed for that. But having been in construction forever, I don't know of a contractor or a developer that would pay for fire or service sheriff's calls out there. So I understand where these guys are coming from. In 2008, they came.
The green light is on the microphone. It just stopped. Hang on, just, oh, there you go.
They expected it to be able to. The cow's out of the barn now, but what happened that the city of Fountain did not? That's what I'd like to know. Or is it just too late? And to say that we promise them that they're going to have water whenever they dig the first shovel of dirt, I don't believe that, because I was right here in this audience 20 years ago when we were promised that we would always have water, and that is not the case right now. So I don't think to promise these folks that they're going to have water in 20 or 50 years, I don't think that's fair, because we can't do that. Everything revolves around water and money. I'd like to know the 300 calls that were made to service Colorado Springs. What were those calls? And how far did they go? And how long were they gone? And I'm asking, but more with a statement, obviously we must have had manpower, labor, and time and vehicles to do that, or we wouldn't have done it. Is that correct?
Fran, that's
Chief
correct.
Weber?
That's generally a correct statement. So it's 300 some odd calls. We only sent those assets when we have 3 ambulances that are fully in service inside the city of Fountain. So it's only our 3rd ambulance, typically from Fire Station 3, right? That's just out past Walmart.
Okay.
That is most likely sent on the vast majority of those calls. Typically, the other 2 ambulances cover in the city of Fountain. If we have one already on a call, then we decline those calls and we don't send that 3rd ambulance. So that happened on a number of calls. I can't even tell you how many, but we did decline a bunch of them. It really is providing a service to AMR, which has been spoken here, is the contract service for Colorado Springs and Colorado Springs Fire Department. So we end up augmenting where they can't, and AMR is struggling mighty with personnel, retention, et cetera.
Right.
So it's just making the problem worse. So I hope that answered your question.
How many calls did we have in Fountain?
I'd have to get you that information. It's
Okay.
a lot. If we spent 300 up there, it's in the thousands that we had in Fountain.
Yeah.
And remember, these are only medical calls.
Right.
Yes.
Right, okay. The other thing I wanted to just throw out there is I've heard people ask for help from these folks for the roads in Fountain, and I don't understand that. You know, I don't shop in Fountain for clothes. There's no place to shop for clothes. But when I drive to Briargate or Colorado Springs to buy clothes, no one has asked me to help with the roads there. So I don't know that it's fair that we ask a developer to pay for the roads here in Fountain. Am I missing something?
When you shop in Colorado Springs, you're paying an RTA tax, which helps with the roads. Many places, because I went out to In-N-Out recently and looked at the receipt, there's a PIF on it. And
Right.
the PIF helps pay for the roads for the development in that area. So there are different ways that you're paying for the roads. So when you're spending your dollars outside of Fountain, you're helping the place where you're shopping. Todd, do you want to address that a little bit more?
Yeah, Fran, specific on that, in our master transportation plan that Wilson and Company's completed for us, the second proposal that we sent over to La Plata only included roads that basically go from the eastern portion of the city, travel west through the city, and then going towards I-25, or Mark Shuffle that's in the city up to Peaceful Valley that goes north. And a lot of their numbers, it depends on the street, but at build-out of this, it shows that over 90% of the traffic on those roads will not be from the city of Fountain. So that's a justification of the impact that that's going to have on us.
Well, and to your point, Sharon, about shopping in Fountain, we have 2 Walmarts and a Safeway. And we don't even have a dress shop or a clothing store in Fountain. So that's where I'm coming from on that issue. People don't come down here to shop for clothes. No, 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 no. So.
Thank you very much,
That's
Mrs.
it.
Carrick.
All right.
Okay, is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak tonight? Are there any council members who have any questions? Because there's a couple of you I haven't heard from at all. Councilmember Corey or Councilmember Duncan, I want to make sure that you have questions if they're addressed.
I don't have any questions. There have been council members that have asked the same questions that I would have.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Councilmember Corey?
I did have one question for the La Plata development, because the people that'll be out there, obviously they're going to have to drive through Fountain City roads to get to like the interstate or anywhere in town. Would you be able to work with us as a city if we set up some kind of road fee or something along those lines?
Yes, we're willing to work with the city of Fountain on mitigating our impacts. This transportation issue is complicated. In our letter that we sent, which I presume all of you have seen, we pointed out that if we go into Colorado Springs, we will be required to improve all kinds of roads, pay for all that expense to expand and improve the roads in the traffic system. The roads that Mr. Evans referred to is he's concerned that traffic from T-Cross Ranch or Cane Ranch is going to drive on Link Road and Fountain Mesa to get to I-25, and that's probably true. There will be a lot of traffic, although 90% of the traffic, that number that you referred to, we would dispute. There will probably also be residents from our properties that would drive on Ohio or some other way to get out to I-25. So there will be impacts on those roads. Overall, our project is going to improve the transportation system. The main route from our property, I-25, will be Mesa Ridge Parkway, which is a state highway, not a Fountain Road. Again, the way we interpreted Mr. Evans' offer was that we could pay 100% of the cost of improving and maintaining in perpetuity all roads that led to I-25 from our project. I think that's unreasonable to ask us to do that. But yeah, we're willing to discuss all kinds of things with Fountain. We're still talking to Fountain about improving the bridge across Cottonwood, or building a bridge across Jimmy Camp Creek, and about other improvements. So, you know, we want to be good neighbors, but the fact is, and this is why we're here. We do not believe that Fountain can supply water for our project and in any kind of timely manner. And I would point out that when we started discussions with Fountain, we have nothing against Fountain. We wanted to come into Fountain. We submitted a plan to Fountain. Fountain administration told us in January of 2019 that they had water that they could supply our first phase. They had adequate water to supply the whole project, but additional infrastructure would have to be built. They represented to us that infrastructure existed to transport water that did not in fact exist. And it wasn't until Mr. Blankenship was hired and did a study and realized that all that stuff wasn't true and they couldn't serve our property. And now, and you had a plan in the early 2000s for water to develop infrastructure. It was never implemented. Nothing was ever done. Had that plan been implemented, we wouldn't be here today because you'd be able to supply the water, but it was never done. And now there supposedly is a new plan, which isn't a plan, it's an idea, which according to the city's figures, in today's dollars is $212 million.
Okay, I believe this stuff we've already heard, so I'm gonna, the button isn't on for the timer, Joni, so I believe we've at 3 minutes there. So if I could have Engineer Brandy come up, please, for a few moments. I would like to ask her some questions.
Could I respond to one question about the regional?
Very short, please.
My name's Don Gurabat. The traffic issue is a regional issue. I don't dispute that from what Todd's saying. But Pikes Peak Regional Transportation Agency is in a position to do that. Fountain is not a part of that. It sounds as if Fountain is going to join that. With that, it's our understanding that the city of Colorado Springs is going to forego funds that they would get that would be transferred into the city of Fountain.
Do you have a signed agreement?
This is a regional issue.
Do you have a signed agreement? Do you have a signed agreement, or are you just saying that's a coulda, shoulda, woulda?
This is a jurisdictional issue.
Okay, because recently, in the last couple minutes, all I've heard is from, just to be blank and honest, is a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda. So I'd like to see some facts. And I'd like Engineer Brandy to come up, please, and answer some questions. So we're talking about roads right now.
Correct.
Can you tell us the difference between how roads are done in Colorado Springs and the city of Fountain, and road impact fees and what are collected? And what are the chances of them getting something like that from Colorado Springs that was just described?
Right now, Colorado Springs, as was mentioned, is part of PPRTA, the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. The city of Fountain is not. So a majority of the funding for the roads in Colorado Springs comes from PPRTA. Whereas down here in Fountain, we didn't have PPRTA. We had the Moving Fountain Forward Tax, which has since that portion did a sunset. We tried to renew it. That failed unsuccessfully and unfortunately. We went through the process to do the master transportation plan, of which a part of that is a traffic impact fee. Currently, we have an interim traffic impact fee, and we will be coming back to council May or June to make a permanent transportation impact fee, and that is how we will address those issues here. That's the difference. There's not that individual fee in the city of Colorado Springs. You pay that into PPRTA through the sales tax. So it's spread out region-wide, and then with the smaller municipalities in the county that are also involved.
So what are the odds of Colorado Springs, by the time they're building here, having a street impact fee?
I think Mr. Evans had brought that up specifically with Colorado Springs, and my understanding is that a regional impact fee is not something that they're interested at this time.
So thank you very much.
Mayor,
Mr.
one thing,
Evans?
I want to make sure that everybody understands, and we've had these discussions with La Plata. It's not Fountain versus La Plata. La Plata has been good to work with. They have been for these past couple of years. But our responsibility, the only way you can put together a transportation plan is what Mr. Gravett just mentioned. It has to be done regionally. And way back when Colorado Springs, 2019, I remember when that was, Brandy, we had a meeting at PPACG and offered to Colorado Springs to do our traffic plans, master plans together as a region. And that was turned down at the time. El Paso County's been very good to work with. They want to come up with some regional plan for the Fountain Valley. So I hope they don't understand, and I hope everyone understands, our responsibility is to do what's best for our citizens. So that's what we will continue to do, even though if it doesn't work out, and not just for Cane Ranch, but any individual landowner or project out there, we have to do what's best for the entire community. So when we do send proposals over, we do have to take into consideration that Link Road, Squirrel Creek, Mark Shuffle, and all of CNS and those others will have to be rebuilt probably in 10, 15 years, and it will be based off the traffic trips that are projected to come east through here. So we have to find a way to fund that. That's nothing against La Plata or their project, but that's our responsibility to do. So we're going to make sure we continue to do that for our residents.
Okay, this is the last call from any comments or questions from citizens in the audience. Okay, it's the last call from any questions or comments from any council members. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you running up there.
I would just like to say that in response to your coulda, woulda, shoulda, that's what I hear. That's what I hear from this council. We should have had this plan in place. We could have had this plan in place, but we did not. So now we're here, and what happened? Why wasn't it done? Can someone explain that?
Well, you've already asked the question, and according to our policies and procedures, you get one chance to come up and ask a question. You've had your one chance, but since it wasn't answered adequately, I'm going to turn that to staff and just say, maybe Mr. Blankenship, if you could just answer it very quickly.
Be happy to, Mayor. I guess we could roll back the clock to 2007, when the master plan was completed. And then soon thereafter, the former master plan was based on predictions of growth. And it predicted growth to occur at a certain rate over a number of years. And based on that prediction, it would have generated the revenue necessary to build those improvements. Quite frankly, when we look back, that growth did not occur. And so the revenue was not generated to implement that plan. I could have, or the director at that time could have stood there and said to this council or to the council at that time, I believe that in 2022, we'll have developers that are coming into our community and we'll need these resources. But in order for us to provide these resources, we're going to need to charge our existing customers a significant amount more money so that we can build these just in case these developers actually show up. And so I believe that the plan wasn't implemented because the growth that was predicted with the plan did not occur, and the revenues that were anticipated to be generated by that plan were not generated, and the ratepayers were not asked to foot the bill for predicted growth. So that's what I believe, and why I believe that plan was not implemented.
But Fountain Sanitation did, right?
Thank you
right?
very much. Thank you. Okay. Council, are there any further questions from or comments from anyone on council? Troy, did you want to do a short wrap-up again?
The only thing I think I'll say is just to remind you of the standard to apply. So I think, as the council, if you'd like, obviously to discuss it as a group and come to a consensus, I would. Maybe a personal request, I think, considering all that we've gone through for this, I think it makes sense to have a formal vote on this item. That would be my request. Either, vote it up or down. And I know that there's been times when the council has chosen not to take action, but I think on this one, I think we'd all kind of like some very clear answer. But other than that, I think you guys have what you need to make a decision then.
So we have really 3 choices here tonight. Well, 4 if we ignore yours, so we'll ignore what, I mean, you don't want us to put it off. Okay, we really have 3 choices here tonight. We can approve the disconnection. We can not approve the disconnection, or this can fail for lack of a motion. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's been threatened several times here tonight in the beginning, opening statements, basically, that I'll sue you, I'll sue you, I'll sue you. It is not the typical, you're going to end up in court for millions of dollars on this lawsuit, right? This is very different than if someone is suing someone for, say, being in a car accident, since that was brought up tonight.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. That's a good question. So no, it would be a petition basically to the judicial branch, and because they have kind of a check and balance over the legislature, who are, there is the request now. So it would be kind of that check and balance. They have not, La Plata has not talked about a actual lawsuit over probably what I would call a contractual dispute over the annexation agreement. What they're talking about is a petition to district court. So it would be.
Right. Which is very different than a lawsuit.
Which is very different.
But I want to make sure people understand that, but when they say we're going to go to court, it's very different. And so really, our expense would be your time.
Yes, ma'am, yeah, yes.
Okay.
I'm here to serve, ma'am.
Well, I just,
Yes,
You
you're
know.
correct, you're correct.
okay.
And I mean, obviously, staff time and preparation and, all those things, but yes, that's correct.
Okay. All righty. So I'm not going to read the whole ordinance again because it's rather lengthy and rather complicated, but this is the first reading of ordinance 1770. Do we have anyone that would like to make a motion for anything? Councilmember Rick.
I don't have a motion, but I would like to make
Oh,
a
I'm
statement.
sorry. Oh, okay. I thought we were done with that. Okay, go ahead.
Over 2 nights, I've heard a lot of comments, a lot of positions, a lot of people bringing up very good points. My background is in business. I was in business for 22 years. And one of the things that you deal with in business is contracts. Contract is an agreement between 2 parties to mutually perform things that are of mutual agreement to each other. When I listened to the petition, Fountain is essentially in breach of contract. We agreed to provide water. We willingly agreed. We signed up for it.
Okay, Mr. Rick, I'm going to interrupt you. I believe you're giving your opinion. It sounds to me like how you're going to vote, and I'm not comfortable with that. And can I have an opinion from the attorney on that, please?
I think at this point, you've kind of heard from everyone from the public and staff and the applicant. I think explaining your positions at this point is acceptable, to try to talk through the issues. So I don't necessarily see a problem with what Councilman Rick has said so far, at least.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
As I was saying, we're in breach of contract. That's just a simple matter of fact. We said we'd give them water when they wanted. They said they wanted it. We're in breach of contract. When you're in breach of contract, you are entitled to ask for relief. You're entitled to ask for the contract to be broken, to be discontinued. So legally, from that standpoint, the applicant is within their rights. Second thing is, I campaigned on property rights. People have the right to do with their property what they feel is best within certain limits. I would love to tell the developer that you need to leave that property as open space from now until eternity, but morally that's wrong. They have the right to build houses. They have the right to put businesses there. And I don't feel I have the right to stop them from doing that. They deserve to profit off of the money they have invested in that property. So while it may not be popular, I will support the applicant's position. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, are there any further comments from anyone on council? All right, not seeing any. Is there anyone who wants to make a motion for anything? Okay, seeing, okay, Mr. Rick, Councilmember Rick?
I move to approve ordinance 1770 on first reading.
Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
Second.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve ordinance 1770. Please vote.
Two yes, four no. Motion fails.
That's only 6.
Oh, I apologize. One person has chosen not to vote? Or did you not get it in time? Okay, can we just reset the vote, please?
Okay.
I apologize, I may have pushed the button too quickly. Three yes, four no. Motion failed.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion fails. Mr. Attorney, anything to say?
No, that's the council's decision. We'll move on.
All right, thank you. Going to take a break until 9:15, and then we'll be back for the next item. Thank you. Okay, if we could bring the meeting back to order. All righty. We are done with old business. I thought everybody might applaud. All right. Item 9A, consideration of items removed from the consent agenda. We have no items that were removed from the consent agenda, so we can skip that. Item 9B, we have already covered. So we are on to item 9C, discussion related to current sign code regulations, Title 17, that prohibit signage within the public right-of-way. Ms. Martinez, you are the popular person tonight.
Good evening. At the request of Councilmember Rick, he had asked at the March meeting to have staff come back have a discussion regarding proposed changes to the code regarding signs within the public rights-of-way. So that's what will be discussed tonight. Next slide. So in 2015, just a brief, some of you were sitting on this council when staff amended Title 17 in 2020. Some may not be familiar with some of the Supreme Court rulings that have affected some of the changes regarding how local governments and government in general can regulate signs. So I'm just going to do a quick briefing on that. But in 2015, the Supreme Court made a ruling in a case called Reed versus Town of Gilbert. Town of Gilbert is located in Arizona. The town of Gilbert had various sign regulations based upon the message of the sign. In this instance, they had stricter regulations for religious uses than they did for other uses or other messages that were being depicted on signs within their public rights-of-way. Reed felt that that was a discrimination of speech and therefore had filed multiple appeals, raising that up through the court system to the Supreme Court, who then ruled in Reed's favor, stipulating that government cannot regulate signs based upon the message being conveyed, which ultimately changed the way all governments across the nation can regulate signs and would now need to be content neutral. As a result of that, all government entities across the nation have to regulate and update their sign codes if they had any type of regulations that required you to read the message of the sign. So if it required you to read the content of it to determine what type of sign it was then considered a violation of what is known as the Reed Rule now. Local governments can regulate signs based upon time, place, and manner, so how long they can go up, where they can go up, and the manner, which is basically the material type of the sign. Is it a swing sign? Is it banner material? That type. And all government regulations that are written are held to strict scrutiny, which is a judicial review of those regulations in order to determine whether the constitutionality of the law is upheld. Next slide. So to bring Fountain's code regulations up to compliance with the Supreme Court ruling in 2020, even before that, 2018, we started the process, 2020 commenced or finalized the process of updating our zoning code, which is Title 17 of the Fountain Municipal Code, which included signs. At that 2020 meeting, there was a lot of discussion with the council at the time regarding whether signs should or should not be allowed within the public right-of-way. At that meeting, City Council decided to prohibit the signage within the right-of-way due to various issues, including the timeframes that could or could not be allowed, the inability to regulate the message, the limitation and constraints of the enforcement, storage fees if we were to allow it, and then a permit tracking. And so I did go back and listen to that meeting to just kind of summarize what that discussion occurred. And that brings us up to where we are at today.
All right, thank you. And so Councilmember Rick?
Thank you. I believe there's another slide. I submitted a letter, and it was supposed to be in the packet. I thought it was going to be on a slide.
That letter was included in the packet.
Okay, but it's not a slide. Okay, I apologize. So in the packet, I included a letter, and as stated, we adopted a code that prohibits signs in the public right-of-way. And while it did clean up the city, and it did get rid of a lot of the trash, it also prohibited a lot of signs that would be considered free speech. It limited people from doing things like posting signs for a garage sale. for an open house so they could sell their house. For a church to either advertise regular service or special services, like Vacation Bible School, like Easter Sunday. It prohibited signs from putting on for special events, like parades or fall festivals and such. What I would ask that the council consider is that we change our code from no signs to signs are allowed in the public right-of-way from noon on Friday until noon on Monday only. Okay? I don't want to go back to the old trashy look that we had, but I do want to allow people to post signs for the reasons I've stated. I will tell you that it is my understanding that we don't have anyone from code enforcement working on the weekends. And driving around Fountain, I have seen companies and individuals post signs in the public right-of-way advising a house for sale, here's a house for sale, here's a garage sale, etc. And based off what I've seen, sometimes they pick up their signs and sometimes they don't. I am concerned that code enforcement it appears, is going around every week picking up signs, and there's no mechanism for which they have to deal with repeat offenders. So it's a two-part request. One, that we consider signs being allowed from noon on Friday to noon on Monday. And two, we direct staff to come up with some way to warn and eventually ticket repeat offenders of people who don't clean up their signs. And that's all I have, Madam.
Okay, thank you, really quick. So before we have staff come up and do their presentation, I'm going to ask council, and I really need everybody to answer if they even want to continue with this discussion or if it is something that they're not interested in addressing at this time. So feel free to speak up, whoever wants to go first with that answer. If you want to continue the discussion or are you not interested in changing the ordinance?
No, because changing the ordinance is a can of worms and it's just going to get out of control. And we can't afford to have anybody monitor the entire city on Monday at noon. We'd have to hire a whole bunch of people. So that's not even logical either.
Okay. Councilmember Hinton?
In respect to Councilmember Rick, I'm in agreement with Councilmember Applegate that I don't think we can get in this business of deciding who could do signs from Friday at noon and picking it up on Monday. You start to run down a rabbit hole, in my opinion, that you can't control it because once you open the gates, you can't close it back up. So I think that we just keep in my opinion, just keep what we already have. So I'm not in further discussion of this one.
Mr. Applegate, did you want to say something else? Your mic is still on. Okay, Councilmember Estes?
I understand where Mr. Rick is coming from, but I think even if you change the ordinance to allow signs on the weekend, code enforcement's still going to have an issue. So I don't want to proceed.
Councilmember Corey?
I kind of want to hear where this goes, but at the same time, if logistically we can't do it at this time, honestly, that might end it right there, the debate, or the discussion, whatever we would have or would propose. So,
Councilmember Duncan?
I don't mind having the discussion. I would like to know because, I have been riding around town also and seeing signs in different places, and I don't know if it's the same builder. I don't know what it is. I don't know how we stop people from posting signs when we have an ordinance for them not to do so. And they're on the corner of where I live, Hurley, there's signs there every weekend. So I don't know how, I don't know if that needs to be a council discussion or it needs to be a discussion with the staff on who are repeat offenders. I don't know.
Okay, so I was on council at the time when we went through this, and we spent a ton of time on this item. I even asked, we ended up passing most of the sign code, and I actually asked to have this part pulled off because I wanted it to run through the Economic Development Commission. Because before we did this review, we actually did have what we called a snipe sign ordinance, and you, as a business owner, you had to have a business license in town. You had to come in, and you filled out a map, and you where you were going to put your signs, because it was an attempt to not have somebody from up in Colorado Springs come and advertise their haircutting business right in front of Wanda Lean's salon that's going to take business away from our businesses here in town. I think maybe about half a dozen of us went in and did the signs. I had my signs thrown out a couple times because I didn't get down there by Monday on noon. That was my problem. I got busy at work. But it really wasn't efficient, and I know it took at least 20 minutes of the clerk's time in the office just to initiate the process, and that's probably may not even be a time we have in this. And so I feel that we really, really reviewed it. We went over and above and beyond trying to get opinions on this one specific piece of it. Also, we've had numerous conversations with Chief Hever over the years. Sometimes what the law says and sometimes with your common sense, what you tell your officers to do, you're not telling them to break the law, but it's just a little bit different, right? Use your common sense. I don't think if a code enforcement officer happened to be in town on Saturday and they saw a garage sale sign on the street, as long as it's not taped to a city street post, it's not blocking line of sight from people, I highly doubt you're gonna pick up because the amount of time sometimes it finds just to find a place to park, let alone to get back to the sign to begin the documentation. We're short on code enforcement. I appreciate you thinking of that and different things. I think in this day and age, there's enough other ways to advertise for the Easter service. I found out about the one at the prayer garden on Facebook, found out the one, and the other ones online, different places. So I am not interested either in bringing this back as a discussion or adding to the ordinances right now at this point. I think I do acknowledge Councilmember Duncan's concern about the repeat offenders and maybe code enforcement. You probably have something on the books you can deal with it anyways right now. So eventually they'll have enough pain when they get enough of their signs thrown away, because I hope we've gone away from the philosophy of saving them to come pick them up. No more. Okay. So, did you have something else to say? Because your light is still on in it. Sometimes people forget, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to know, was this an official vote or was this going to be put up as a motion to either go further with the discussion or not? Because the vote doesn't matter unless it's a motion.
Right, but this is a discussion item.
Right.
It's just a discussion item. So we're basically coming up with a consensus on how we want staff to proceed or not.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Rick?
Yes, Madam Mayor, based off the discussion, I withdraw my request.
Okay, thank you. Since code enforcement sat through the whole meeting, did you want to just kind of say anything from your point of view on how this might affect you, or just real quick? Or no? Okay, this one go home. Oh, okay.
Hey, we're over 3 hours in. Don't you want to hear me talk? Come on. Come on. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We will do whatever the council wants us to do. But just from, was it March or September? September through March, we picked up signs costing the taxpayer almost $4,000. I broke it down, what it cost to have the code enforcement officer stop, get the sign, we have to take them, throw them away. And the problem with the offenders, we're going to have to that's something we cite. Now we're going to tie up the courts, because we're going to have to take them to court. So there's a bigger picture, and again, we'll do what you would like us to do. But it will tie up the courts once we cite those frequent flyers. We have to get them into court, that ties up the courts, and by the time we get there, it could be 3 or 4 months down the road. And like the mayor said, we are short-staffed, and we do the best we can. And just so you know, between our cases and pending calls, we are 195 calls down. So we don't have the manpower to go and pick up signs on Mondays. So that's what I have to say.
Okay. All right.
But again, we'll do whatever you want us to do.
Right, right. But I think probably what Councilmember Duncan is referring to is probably mostly builder signs. Oh, yes. Yeah, so.
You know, I just would like to, you know, not as so much as go as far as sending them a citation, but maybe sending them a copy of our ordinance so they won't do it again, or I don't know. You know, I would like to know, do they call and ask for their signs, or have they been picked?
Oh, no, they don't call. And a lot of them is sprinkler blowouts and aeration and pick up junk and, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of them aren't even in the city of Fountain.
Right.
They come down, they put their signs out, so if you have junk to be hauled off, you're calling Colorado Springs, or you're calling El Paso County for them to come down and get it.
So realtors, they don't call and
No, we
ask?
don't have as many problems with the
Okay.
realtors.
So maybe they got the message, I don't know.
Well, the realtors probably have to pay for their own signs as part of their business, where these builders, they just hire a company and they don't, yeah.
So
they
if
don't
I can
care.
just take the council's time, just a minute. I want to introduce you to my team, which is, stand up, Tish Cornella, and she is our new code enforcement supervisor, doing an awesome job. And we have, that's right. And Tyrone Bolden.
T.
He sat so long, he can't get up, huh?
Over the past year, they've been doing it alone. And even though we're calls behind, they're doing a great job. Great job. So I just wanted to
Lucia,
introduce them.
so you guys can get out of here. I just want to be on the record. I told Lucia I want to do this at the end of the night, but they've been here a long time and they're tired. Since we've been working directly with Tish and Tyrone, the coordination between public safety, police department, code enforcement has never been as good in the 7 years that I've been here. So it's really a credit to Lieutenant Racine, Tyrone and Tish, who are also former law enforcement officers that get it. They're very collaborative in nature. I think we'll do a lot of good things for the city together as soon as we all get staffing up and running. To include next month, we'll be doing a combined homeless sweep, where we'll get out in front of the homeless problem and address it every month throughout the summer to be ahead of it. But I just want to tip my hats to that team. So that's it. Thank you.
Very good job, very good, very good.
Mr. Couch, I feel like you deserve 2 minutes of our time. You sat here for 3.5 hours. Do you have anything you'd like to say this evening?
Because that says it.
Okay, in other words, now I owe you a cup of coffee, huh? All right, we are on to correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. Mr. Trainer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the interest of time, I'm going to save my items for our weekly update.
Mr. Evans.
Just again, kudos to our 3 code enforcement folks. They really have been doing a great job. Been taking care of a lot of homes that have been long-going issues. They've been handling it. So great job to all of you.
Mr. Johnson.
Nothing from me tonight. Thank you.
Chief Hubbard? Nope, you're done. Thank you. Okay, Chris.
Oh, no, I have a really good thing. Are you ready? 180 people attended Autism Awareness Night at the fire
Oh,
department.
my gosh. Whoa.
180, biggest event, biggest attendance. Check social media, Facebook, it'll all be out there tomorrow, but I just want to report back. We thought 40 or 50, 180 people showed up. Great event.
Well, you know the rule. If you ever plan it on a council night again, we're moving council over there because we want to have the fun.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. That's way more people attend our council meeting. That would have been a good one over there, huh? Ms. Martinez.
I have nothing tonight.
Mr. Blankenship.
I just wanted to thank the council for acknowledging Mike Fink and his retirement. That was very, very much appreciated. And we are having a retirement celebration for him at noon on Friday right here in this room. So if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trilch.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I like Scott's idea. I'll just include it in the weekly report. Thank you.
Okay, I can't tell. Is there anybody else back there? I know, Karen, you're like part of the group now. Karen, anything? IT?
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
And, I'm sorry, I'm going blank. Taylor. All right. Mr., thank you. Joni, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I got to get used to the new circle. Mr. Rick?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Nothing at this time.
Chief, I just have one comment. You brought up a good point towards the end, which caught my eyes about the homeless population, making sure that we stay on top of that. Every day I drive into the city, it seems like that situation is getting worse and worse, and it is spilling out into the outer layers of Colorado Springs. And so I like your proposed, just kind of staying on top of that, because we've seen recent events with fires and everything that's happening. You know, you can't control, you know, those that go in that outer layers in the woods and everything and have fires, which in this place, we've seen in the last couple of days, can catch on fire very easily. So I appreciate that.
Councilmember Duncan.
I have a couple of things. I'm going to be quick. This weekend on Saturday, just want to let you know that I'm going to be late to the employee recognition. I scheduled an event with triple breast cancer awareness at the Penrose Library. Beforehand, I am the sponsor of this event, so I will be late coming, so I will be there. So if the staff, you know, this is an event that I just don't want to miss. The Youth Council, it's on its way to Denver, to the state capitol. Woohoo! And I'm excited, they're excited, the parents are excited. So we're gonna have a great time and take lots of pictures so they can be on social media and their parents can have, and they can have for memories to last. I'd also like to congratulate the finance team for Fountain for being awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Finance Reporting for the 12th consecutive year. That's something to be really proud of. And I'd also, the last thing is we are scheduled to go to CML conference in June. And I'd like to know if any of the board members are wanting to run for office for the executive board.
Haven't even thought about it.
I have thought about it. So, you know, before I requested that the council give me a letter of recommendation. It was an appointment for 3 months. The appointment, I didn't win the appointment, but the appointment position is open again. So in our municipality, there will be 3 seats, and I've heard there's a lot of interest. So if the board, I'm asking for the board to give me a letter of recommendation, as you did before, so that I may run for a seat with CML in June.
I think last time that I just signed it, and that was, do you want the whole council to sign it this time?
It doesn't matter. It says the board, the mayor, the city
Okay.
manager, there's a
Okay.
list, so
Well,
it
I
doesn't.
think you probably could almost reproduce the same letter that we had before, unless you would like some changes to it. Can you work with Scott on getting that done?
Just one more, I think I got 2 more awards since then, so I'll put that down there. So, you know, and so I just want to submit that. They have a list of requirements this time, so I want to get that started and get my campaign on the way.
Mr. Applegate.
Yeah, just a little bit to go with what we were talking about all night. I'm on the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department Advisory Board, and we come up with some information here Wednesday when I was there that's rather interesting. Year-to-date, 2022, single-family housing starts are down 16.57%. and commercial is down 7.69, but that doesn't matter because they're bigger. But the housing starts, you hear that it's slowing down in the country. I didn't think it was going to slow down here at all, but according to that, it is slowing down about 16.5% from year to date. Oh, and year to date, they've already done for value $1,125,666,555. That's a lot.
Is that probably like the highest they've ever done, huh? Just because of the cost of houses?
No, that's actually down
Oh,
8.97 from year to date last year.
wow, okay, because they're building some pretty big houses up north.
They do some big stuff.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes.
I just want to give a shout out. This week is National Laboratory Professionals Week. So I want to give a shout out to all my old coworkers and everything that worked in the laboratory. They're the behind the scenes people in the medical world that people don't think about, but they're an integral part of the team. So I just want to give a shout out to them.
Yes, they are. They're an integral part of the team. Yep. Every time they stick your arm, you remember that, right? Gosh, Denver, you name it, been there, tons of meetings, legislative craziness. I can't even spend an hour on it. I do have a question for council. Every once in a while, we will get a proclamation. This particular one I got like the day after we just done all the proclamations, and we're really held steady that we're only doing those once a month because you could just fill your time. But I did get one from PPACG that they were asking all the municipalities to sign for Air Quality Awareness Week, which is May 2 through 6. So if we even waited to have it at our first council meeting, the week would be over. The reason they're asking us to sign it is because we're in risk of going out of compliance, which could cost us all a lot more money. So they're just trying to bring awareness to just small changes people can potentially make in their lifestyles to keep us on that edge of compliance without going out. What I'd like to ask council is if we get a proclamation like this and they would like it issued and it's at a time frame between that, obviously it would go to Scott and be reviewed, but are you comfortable with me just signing it as a representative of the city without it having to be read into record and going through, so.
Yes.
Okay, and in the future too?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, me too. I'm totally fine with you signing off on last-minute proclamations like that.
okay. All right, okay, thank you very much.